Well, hello. It's a Thursday, and today a little bit of a unique show. Craig Smoke and I will be at a funeral by the time this show begins at 3 o'clock on Thursday. His uncle, my brother-in-law, Jim Primos, who's an incredible man. And yeah, we've been through a little bit of that with my brother passing away back in April and that memorial just a couple of weeks ago. So we are out with Paul on vacation. It's not something that you plan. So we have interviews, some of the better ones from not only this week, but also a few other segments too, including one we have not yet shown you with Matt Tate, who covers Kansas athletics and a lot on KU football, Jalen Daniels, Lance Leipold, and so much more. Paul Catalina's top 5 on the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 coming up for the 2024 season. Plus, we'll hear from RG3, Paceline, CEO of Paceline Equity Partners, Sam Laughlin, on private equity and how they're really a lot more being said about private equity firms getting involved in college athletics, and SMU AD Rick Hart. All of that and more right here today on 365 Sports. Robert Griffin III, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, ESPN, NFL veteran, and a great friend of the show, has a camp coming up this weekend. A great time to have him on and discuss many things. But RG3, your thoughts? I know you weren't around when Willie Mays was playing, but I know your father probably talked about him quite a bit. Your thoughts about the legacy of Willie Mays?
Hey, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on the show. And when you talk about Willie Mays, this is the impact that I believe he had. You guys have already been talking about how he's arguably the best baseball player of all time. Home runs, hits, batting average, all-star appearances, World Series wins, like all of those things add to that impact. But the catch that he had over the shoulder that everyone references to this day, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that bad boy happened in 1954?
Yep.
That catch happened in 1954, and for everyone who's listening, I wasn't born until 1990, okay? And my dad took the time to sit me down and make me watch that catch. That tells you how much of an impact this guy had, that over 30, 40 years later, people are still talking about something that he did on the baseball diamond. So, to me, when you think of Willie Mays, there's no way to separate him and baseball, the impact that he had. You saw how many people poured out their adoration for him, their appreciation for him, and celebrated him after he died at 93 years old the other day. To me, he's a guy that will never, ever be forgotten. And I will always remember that catch, even though I wasn't born or alive when it happened.
Well, the one thing about him, and I was on a show today up in Tulsa, in Oklahoma City, that they said that you never heard one thing about, not one negative thing about Willie Mays, kind of like the way you hear about Earl Campbell, who was the Heisman Trophy winner running back at Texas, that he was the way he handled himself with grace, and that was another thing about him, which is always a great legacy for any human being.
No, it's very rare in today's world, right, with social media and Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever it may be, that you don't hear negative things about anybody. So for a guy like Willie Mays, I'm happy for him, happy for his family, his friends, his loved ones, that in his passing you hear not just all the great things, but it just reaffirms what you just said. A lot of people love this guy. The Say Hey Kid, and you listen to the actual story behind that and how sometimes he would forget people's names, but he always made it a point to talk to them. And it's not like people walked around calling him that.
Right.
But it stuck with him throughout his entire career, after he was done, and all the way until he passed away at 93, and it will continue with him through the annals of history. So I just feel like we got to get back to celebrating people and not just tearing them down. And Willie Mays' death and what you're talking about kind of exemplifies that. We can't allow the world today to start making us have these negative thoughts towards everybody. Appreciate people for who they are, appreciate their greatness, and don't be afraid to praise them.
You are about to host another camp, coming back home to Waco. I know, obviously, Copper's Cove, where you played your high school ball, but coming back to Waco, Baylor, to have another camp. What does that mean to you to give back and be able to be a part of the younger lives and maybe give one player or 50 that inspiration of, man, I want to be like RG3. I want to be able to play football like RG3 and be who he is?
Listen, I know that's part of the motivation. And even when I put out a tweet today about the camp and I said, hey, man, you want to come get better? You want to be the best, or you think you're the best, you want to win a Heisman Trophy, then come to this camp, and I'll show you how to get that done. But it's not just me, right? It's Coach Dave Aranda, and it's the staff, and it's the players that are going to show up and show out for these young guys that are going to be the next generation of stars. Many of them might even come to Baylor University and be the stars that help get the football program not just back on track, but staying at the top of the Big 12. So for me, I don't want them to come just to the camp to try to be like myself. I want them to be better than I am. And when I watch some of these guys coming out of high school now, and I go back and I look at my own high school highlight tape, I'm like, man, these guys are way better than I was when I was coming out of high school. But I also see it from a standpoint of, because I came out the way that I did and I got so much better while I was at Baylor, and then I was able to go and be Rookie of the Year and be a Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFL, I have lived everything that they want to live short of a Super Bowl championship, right? Sort of having that Super Bowl ring on my finger. I want to be able to give that back to the community, and that community is the community of Waco and the community of Central Texas and just Texas as a whole. If it wasn't for Texas and the way that we look at football and how we not worship the game, but we pay our dues and we dedicate ourselves to it, I would not be where I am today. I wouldn't be who I am today. So I just want to be able to give that back to the rising stars. And a guy like Cade Klubnik, who's now the starting quarterback at Clemson and has been for a year or two, came to this camp a few years back, I believe in 2018. And I was able to connect with him and see, man, this kid is going to be great. I'm very excited for what he's going to do this year there with Dabo Swinney in Clemson. And I want to continue to work with the quarterbacks and the wideouts and the running backs in every single position that shows up, so that when they have that opportunity to make it and not just go to college but go professional, we can say, hey, we aided in helping these people get to where they wanted to be. And that's the end goal. We just want to help people succeed.
Robert, what's your relationship like with Dave Aranda? Just how often have you been able to speak with him? And clearly, I'm sure if you wanted to talk football, there's been some brilliant conversations there, because that man knows about as much as anybody. You know the struggles of the past couple of seasons, and this program was riding a high back in 2021, but now he finds himself in a situation where there's a lot of pressure. So just personally, what's the relationship been like, knowing him, and your thoughts on just where he and Baylor find themselves heading into this season with the expectation that they need to win some football games?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk about Coach Dave Aranda without saying, he's a better person than he is a coach, and he's a pretty damn good coach, right? So for me, my approach to this entire situation has always been support. Dave Aranda has been very open to me coming back to the school, coming back to the football program, talking to the team, being able to allow me to use this team to help give back to the community at this camp. So I'm always thankful towards him. And even during the season last year, when things were going awry and I'm getting messages about, hey, man, maybe you should be the coach of the Baylor Bears, I'm like, you know what? I'm standing 10 toes down with Coach Aranda. And all the reasons that I explained are why, but it's also because you have to have people on your staff that can kind of fill the blind spots that maybe you might have, right? They always say that the old cliche is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I don't know if there's very many rooms that Dave Aranda walks into that he's not the smartest guy in the room. But could he have a guy that's maybe a little more energy, right, to bring that energy to the team? Could he have a guy that is the disciplinarian, maybe more so than he needs to be? I think every staff has to be built out the right way, and I think he's made the necessary changes to the staff to help this team grow and be better. I don't know if you guys saw the viral clips of them jumping in the pool, right?
Yes, I did.
Doing the belly flop competition, and the big boy hit the one-legged backflip, right? And I'm like, you just didn't see that very often the past few years. And you're like, Rob, really? You're telling me that them jumping into a pool is going to help them win football games? You damn right it is. Why? Because it shows team camaraderie. It shows that those guys are close together. It shows that they're having fun together. And the best teams are the ones that have fun together. So I'm really excited for this football season. I'm excited for Coach Dave Aranda because I know if you back that man into a corner, he's going to come out swinging. And I expect the Bears to come out swinging this year.
Robert, when you played, won the Heisman in 11, and obviously were a rock star. And I remember that year, and I remember how it all just kind of like blew up with how that season went. And then also eventually being the number 2 pick in the draft and all that went with that, EA Sports, et cetera. What would you have commanded, you think, back in the day had NIL been around when you were in college?
Great question. I've already said that I do think that the NCAA and the power conferences should go back further than I believe it's 2016 right now to give back pay to student athletes who missed out on NIL. I think it should go back at least 25 years. So not just back to 2011, but all the way back 1999 if we can go that far back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you ask that specific question, I will answer the question. I think when you look at what we were able to accomplish, getting Baylor out of the rut that it was in, and winning a Heisman Trophy at a university that has never experienced that, having the fans, Baylor Nation, be able to be visible and be seen by the country when it felt like we were ignored for such a long time. I don't think you can put a price on that. I know what the price was that was told to me was over $500 million was raised after the Heisman Trophy. And for me, it's like, in that situation, it's not a $1 or $2 or $3 million per year deal that's going to be able to compensate for that. You're talking about being able to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars in NIL because of what you did for a singular city. So one guy that always talks to me and I consider a friend and has been a friend for a long time now is Chip Gaines. And every single time I see him, he says, thank you, because Magnolia, what Waco has become. I don't know if you guys even remember what Waco looked like when we first got there in 2008. By the time we left in 2011, it was much more beautiful. But now in 2024, oh my gosh, it's like it was like almost a third world country back in 2008 compared to what it looks like right now. So I can't necessarily put a number on it, but I do know that we would have brought in a lot. And my family is secure and safe and doing really great because of all the blessings that God has put in our life. But needless to say, I probably would have went to the NFL and been in a much different situation.
Yeah, it would have been insane. I know you probably don't even want to think about that too much, but it is evident all across town. It's evident every time anybody drives by that football stadium of what you contributed, and it goes well beyond that. But that's always a quick reminder there. He mentioned the video game cover. As you well know, the NCAA football game is back for the first time in several years. You've had so many honors during your career, but where does that one rank just in terms of being unique and just being something pretty cool that maybe you never thought about happening, but you were able to experience? And are you a game player? Are you going to be checking out the new NCAA game?
Yeah, I'll answer those backwards. So, yes, I will be checking out the new EA college football game. Really excited. See those guys being on the cover, whether it's you or from Texas. I know it's Texas, but listen, guys, you gotta support everybody in this endeavor when they're bringing back such an iconic game. And then you also got Travis Hunter and then the running back over there from Michigan, Donovan Edwards. So I think it's a very exciting time for gamers. I was a gamer. I was a guy that spent, I'm not lying to you guys, 200, 300 hours building dynasties and taking schools like Baylor or Florida State from being, top 25 to number 1 in the country, winning the Heisman Trophy, doing all those things. So I really visualized those things and had a great time with it. But being on the cover to me kind of goes back to what would I have done with NIL back in the day. I'd have done the same thing I did with the cover. And I was able to bring my teammates out there, was able to experience that with them because a lot of people think that all of these college football players or student athletes are millionaires because they signed one deal. Very few of them are millionaires, but it's how you can impact the team and have that appreciation for them when you get back and when you do make that deal, take care of your offensive line, get your receivers some things, allow those DBs who are picking off passes and getting you the ball back to kind of share in those benefits with you. And I think that's what I think about most when I look at the cover. It was never something I ever thought about. I never looked at the cover of EA Sports at the time, NCAA football, and said I want to be a cover athlete. It's the same reason I always say we won the Heisman instead of I won the Heisman. It's about the team. The team helped us get there, and that's why when everyone looks at that stadium and says, man, that's the house that you built, I'm like, nah, it's the house that we built. Even the years in 2009 when I ended up getting hurt and I tore my ACL and I didn't get a chance to allow J.D. Walton and Jordan Lake to get an opportunity to go out there and be, get to a bowl game or win a bowl game. Those things weighed heavy on me. So I feel like with the cover, it's just more about the team and how the city was able to kind of embrace that process. It was a lot of fun.
You mentioned how much that might have been valued at that year you won the Heisman. When you threw the touchdown pass to Terrence Williams, I have people that back in the day in Baylor Athletics that said that their phones started blowing up. We have to build the stadium. That was always one of the dreams to have it on campus. But when that pass was caught in the corner of the end zone, it was like, oh, my God. That literally, I think they may have raised a ton of money just on text messages that night. Did you realize the impact of that one throw?
I did not in the moment. I did not understand it at all. But I can tell you right now, guys, it wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah,
it wasn't supposed to happen. And I know you guys know this story, but maybe everybody else doesn't. But Coach told me right before that play, he said, "Hey, man, listen, if it ain't there, throw it away. Don't scramble. Don't do anything." And what did I do? I went out there and scrambled to the left because left tackle got beat just slightly. And when I was coming back to find T-Dub, everyone on the team knew this, but when I scrambled, he was the first person I looked for because he was the quarterback's best friend. And he was running a seam route towards the post. When I threw the football, he was still running towards the post. And when I say the post, like that upright to the right side of the field, I threw him back to the back corner of the end zone because I knew he would get there. And I didn't even see the ball completed. I got hit right after I threw it. But Cam Caulfield, still one of my best friends to this day, picked me up after T-Dub caught it, and just the elation in his voice, I will never forget. Oh my God, we have to get it! I will never forget that, and I'll never forget that when the ball was in the air, I could hear Coach Browse screaming, "No!" And then when it was caught, you couldn't hear anything.
Yeah,
I mean, it was that loud. So I'm very thankful for that moment. Obviously, beating Oklahoma in the way that we did obviously aided into why we were able to win the Heisman. But I'm just thankful that the university has continued to benefit from those years back then. And there's an expectation now for Baylor to be great. We just got to get back to making sure it's more consistent.
Robert, I know that you love seeing the players get paid. That's long overdue. We've touched on that. I think most people that are reasonable agree with that should have been happening a long time ago. But now that the pendulum has swung, the conference, the Big 12 that you played in is hardly recognizable in 2024 compared to when you played in it. It might not even be called the Big 12 for much longer. There's just so much shifting. Just what do you make when you observe from the outside or talk to people on the inside about just where sort of college football is as a game right now? What fascinates you? Maybe what concerns you, if anything? Just what are your thoughts in general on where the sport finds itself now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a heavy question because the first thing that comes to my mind is, yes, I'm very excited for the players that they're going to, start sharing in TV revenue and they're getting paid because all these brands have been built off the backs of these student athletes for since the beginning of time, essentially, since the beginning of these universities. When you think back to these schools, you think of two things. You think of the coaches that coached them, and you think of the players that were the stars. Not very often do you think of who the president of the university was. Not very often do you think of who the teachers are. And it's not to kind of paint that in a bad light. It's just these are the people who have aided most in building all of these teams up. But the other part for me, I'm not as worried as other people when they call it the Wild Wild West, because I believe that NIL has leveled the playing field in a sense. Because if I'm a quarterback coming out of high school and this school, Texas, Alabama, whatever, has paid this quarterback $3 million bucks, I'm probably not going there if it was a class of 24 and now I'm a class of 25. I'll probably go somewhere else because they paid that guy a bunch of money. They're going to be inclined to play him. So in a sense, it allows other universities and other schools to get very high quality players, come play for them, and allow there to be a little bit more parity in college football. And I think we have seen that over the past few years. The concerning part for me is two things. One, high school recruitment has been absolutely demolished because why would a coach go get a 2 or 3 star player out of high school when he can go get a 4 or 5 star transfer from a school that's not playing, right? Whether it be a Georgia, Alabama, a USC, those coaches are going to take those guys. They're going to take that Deion Sanders, Coach Prime approach to get their team ready right away because they got to win right away. And the other concerning part for me, guys, is just the travel. You know, who would have ever thought that USC and Washington and Oregon would be in the Big Ten, right? Like playing against Penn State in the snow. Like that is something that I think we have to be cognizant of, even if it's going to go to this big mega conference type of thing. These student athletes, yes, they're getting paid, but they're not getting paid to continue to get taken advantage of. So we got to make sure that the travel is right and the schedules are right and that we're not compromising these young athletes' educational process, because at the end of the day, you guys all know 99% of them are probably not going to be professional athletes when you look at the complete college football or college sports environment. So we got to make sure we're not stressing them too thin or spreading them too thin and taking care of their mental health. I think that's got to be a massive focus here moving forward. It can't just be all about the Benjamins.
I remember the event in New York, Robert, when you had the EA Sports unveiling. It was at a really nice place, and you obviously, Craig, brought that up on the cover. I brought it up too. What was, if you don't mind, did you get wined and dined a lot, or was there, like, the players are all going to get like $600 or whatever if they opt in to use their name, image, likeness, and EA Sports is going to pay them that? Did you get also on top of that, since your career was over, did you get paid for being the cover boy?
Oh yeah, I got paid. I got paid for being the cover athlete, but It was because I was leaving. If you guys remember at that time, obviously NIL was not a thing, right? But you couldn't be on the cover unless you were going pro.
Okay.
So yes, you win the Heisman, but if I had decided to come back for my redshirt senior year, I would not have been the cover athlete on, what was it, NCAA 13. So that's why you've seen some of those covers. And I'm not, listen, every cover athlete deserves it, right? They all got their opportunity. But some of those covers, you're like, why didn't they use this guy? Well, they didn't use that guy because they couldn't. Now, because of NIL and because you can pay athletes, you can get current players on the cover. And I think we'll see a little bit of a mix of both moving forward. If the game pops off like I believe it will, and I know the people want it to, I think you'll see sometimes where the cover athlete is a current athlete, and then other times it's a guy that's going pro.
All right, I got a question. I'm not sure how much you were able to watch Baylor. I know you watch them when you can, but you're doing games on Saturdays too, and then prep for all the NFL coverage. But have you seen enough of DeQuan Finn or know enough about him and Sawyer Robertson to give your kind of ideas of what could be expected in 24?
Yeah, I mean, I really have, and I had a great conversation with Sawyer Robertson last year at the football camp that we have, the RG3 Football Academy. That's going to be on the 22nd this Saturday. I had it last year with him, and I just think for him, it's just about going out and having fun, right? Just playing the game, not worrying about the expectations, not worrying about the pressure to be the guy that he was, coming out of high school. Because I think he does have all the tools and all the skill set. I just think he just got to go play ball. And as far as I know, has Coach decided on who the quarterback is yet?
He did not, which he did back after the year of 21 when Bohannon and Shapen. He has not done that, at least not yet. And from all indications, I don't think they know. Maybe they do behind the, in a coach's office, but I think that they truly don't know at this particular time.
Yeah, and I don't know why he's not making that declaration, but I also don't think that it's really that important. You want, in college football today, in talking to college coaches all across the country, you need two guys, right? So if you got a competition rolling, unless it's just clear and obvious that this guy is a better player, there's no need to announce it, because at some point you're going to need to build the confidence of every quarterback in that room so they know that when they step in there, they're going to be firing on all cylinders. And that's a part of coaching that I don't think a lot of people on the outside understand. Your responsibility isn't just to the one player, it's to the entire team. And if you need two QBs, you've got to find the best way to build them both up. Now, when you talk about DeQuan Finn, I have watched him. And, yeah, I mean, he's pretty sweet, guys, not going to lie. Whether it be his ability to play off a play action, he ran a lot of, the triple option. And when I say triple option, I don't mean like your zone read type of triple options. I'm talking about the triple option where you have the opportunity to have the RPOs be a big part of the game. And I love that he was able to do that in his career. And I watched his highlight tape, and I've watched him on film for about a couple months now, just in case I get some Baylor games. I like to do this stuff in the off season. The film watching doesn't stop. I just think his ability to make difficult things look easy can kind of pull a little bit of – I'll pull a name out for you guys. Josh Gordon. Remember Josh Gordon?
Yes. Yeah.
So Josh was a guy that everybody said, oh, he's not running hard. Oh, he's not trying. It's like, well, he is trying. It's just so much easier for him. It looks like he's not trying hard. And Finn kind of has that element to him at the quarterback position. He can throw it a mile long. He can throw a heat-seeking missile across the middle, like I did to Kevin Reese when it bounced off his head. And
I remember that.
Kendall Wright caught it for a touchdown, right? So Finn has a lot of that in him. And then when he decides to go, his decisiveness when he's a runner is what makes him that triple threat. He's going to allow Baylor to stay in games if he ends up winning the job, just because he can throw it and he can run it. He's not just a run-first quarterback. So that part of it I'm excited about, and I know Coach and them are excited about him and Sawyer going out there and continuing to compete. But I think you're in a good spot when those are your two quarterbacks, and it's going to give them a chance to compete in every single game this year.
Yeah, I know you got to go. Jake Spavital, with what he's run at various places. Last year at Cal, more of the style that you ran with the offense that Coach Briles and company had. Your thoughts about going back to more of it? Doesn't mean you can't run the ball between the tackles, which was underrated as heck when Baylor did it, but your thoughts about opening it up a little bit.
No, I mean, I'm super excited about that. When I heard about Jake Spavital coming in, the first thing that came to mind was, hey, we're obviously trying to win games here, but if we're going to lose scoring 60, okay? We're going to put points on the board, make the fans in the stands be happy, but it also gives you the best chance to win, especially with the roster that Baylor has right now. And you bring in a quarterback like DeQuan Finn, and Sawyer is used to running that type of system as well, because that's what he was so prolific with coming out of high school, right? So to me, it was just like, I love it. You know, when it was Philip Montgomery as the offensive coordinator and we had Coach Briles at the helm, the offense that we ran was exciting. We were trying to win games, but at the same time, we knew that in recruiting, it's going to help you get more players coming to your school when they know they have more opportunities to catch the football, or they have more opportunities as a running back to run through bigger holes and get more of those attempts. Because if you guys remember, last game of my career, there's the Alamo Bowl against Washington. I did not win MVP of that game.
No, you didn't.
Ganaway won MVP of that game, and it's because he ran for over 200 yards. And when teams play cover two shell like Washington did in that game, we handed the football off. So I just think it gives you more opportunities. You don't have to play NFL football at the college level. Let's spread it out, get the ball in the hands of our playmakers, and let these guys go do what they do. So I'm excited, really, really excited to not only see what Spavital does this season, but I'm excited to see him this weekend too.
You are living life right now. You are a part of so many different things that ESPN's doing. All your podcast is great. I like watching it. Among everything else, how do you manage it? And I promise this is my last question. How do you manage your time?
Guys, I try to manage my time by first and foremost making sure that I can be the best husband and the best father possible. So being a girl dad of 4, you know, right now in the summertime, having the chance to have them go swimming, have them jumping all over my back, teaching them different sports, whether it be tennis, basketball, soccer, football, any of those things. I just take pride in that. And they always, being able to do that re-emphasizes to me what I like to always lead with. And you guys know this because you know me. But I like to always lead with fun. So when I'm on ESPN, I'm about having fun, man. I'm not about tearing guys down. I will be constructively critical when I have to, but I always try to lead with fun because sports is fun, life is fun, and people want to see you having a good time. So I don't ever want to have to fake it to make it. It's always fun. My girls keep me young. My wife keeps me young. And that's how I manage the time from that standpoint. I'm never going to go do something that's going to make me a worse father or a worse husband. I'm going to make sure that I'm taking my family with me. They go with me to games all the time. They come with, when I was on Monday Night Countdown, they came with me to Monday Night Countdown because I want my family to be around. And they keep me level-headed, keep me sane, and they're my why. So that's how I manage it all because I know I'm doing it for them to build their future, but I also want to do it for them so we can have some fun together.
I know you're busy, and good luck with your camp coming up this weekend at Baylor. Great stuff, Robert. Thank you for being a part of the show during your schedule, even though it's a little bit less now because of the offseason. Like you said, you watch film. You're doing a lot right now. Thanks for your time. Love you, man, and hope to see you very soon.
No problem, guys. Love you guys as well, and look forward to coming back on the show pretty soon here.
Yes, sir. Robert Griffin III.
The season to rev up your drive with Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco. Your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved, learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
The
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We're now joined by Matt Tate. Wave the wheat. Matt's been on with us many times, a lot of times with men's basketball with Bill Self, but many times football with what Lance Leipold has with the football team getting a lot of respect early on, and they've kind of earned it. Matt, thanks for your time. Craig Smoke and David Smoke. Kansas has not had these kind of expectations in football in a long, long time. Is that something that because of how Lance Leipold handles the system and culture won't be an issue?
Yeah, I really don't think so. Couple of reasons. One, these guys don't feel like they've done anything yet. I mean, they got their bowl rings last week, and that was cool. Certainly a newsworthy, noteworthy moment in Kansas football history. But even that, they kind of looked at them, checked them out, put them on the shelf, and they've just found a way to stay hungry. The year before when they lost to Arkansas, after finally ending that bowl drought and getting back to a bowl game, was the same thing. It was like, we're not celebrating. We got there, but we lost. We had a sub 500 record. Like we believe we can do better, and we expect to do better. And so, that's the culture, that's the expectation, that's the way they operate. And really it has been, especially for this senior class since day one. I mean, even as freshmen, when a lot of them weren't playing a lot of them were watching, teammates on the field struggle. That was in the Les Miles era. They didn't win games. There's been a lot of stories, Luke Grimm, Jalen Daniels, guys like that who are big parts of this team, kind of reflecting back on, we were watching that and we were like, this isn't going to be us, So their goal is still way out there as far as what their big picture is and everything like that. So they're still chasing it. They're still hunting. By no means do they feel like, hey, we've arrived, we can just kind of cruise now. No, they know they in a very big way, a very real way, they haven't done anything yet. So I think that's a great attitude to have, and that's certainly a reflection of the culture and the leadership and the coaching staff, but also of the players.
Matt, how much of a question is there still about Jalen Daniels' health? I mean, from the outside looking in, there's that big caveat that, like, hey, if Jalen Daniels is healthy, they could be special. But how much of a question mark is his health still at this point?
I think it's a huge question mark until it isn't, Yeah. And unfortunately for him, this is back-to-back seasons now where an injury, a different injury, ended his season. And so, yeah, I think he's probably tired of hearing that. I think he's, I think he thinks he's fine, and he thinks that he's going to be fine, and the injuries are just sort of bad luck, fluky things. But again, if it tends to happen to you on a regular basis, it's only right for people to question it and that to continue to be part of your story. So, yeah, I think we have to see it, and I don't go as far as to make a prediction on whether we will. I would have predicted last year that he'd be totally fine. Because their off season between the two bowl games was spent, the strength coach gave some great quotes about changing the way they approach it in the off season with him to try to make him bulletproof and all these things. And it was an awesome visual and image and a great story. And then he got hurt, so I think everybody's sort of, cautiously optimistic that this will be the year that he does stay healthy. And, understandably so. It's the right thing for people to point to on the outside. If he's not healthy, they have a big question at the position. There's talent there, but he's dynamic. He's a difference maker, and he always has been. So, if he's not in there, the question becomes much, much bigger. If he is in there, then all these expectations, all this talk about challenging for a Big 12 title and possibly, with the expansion of the playoff, maybe even making a run at that. I mean, all those things are legit if he's healthy and he's their quarterback. But, until we see it, you do have to kind of keep that in there as sort of the but or if this happens, then this. So it sucks for him. It does. I know he's tired of hearing about it, but, the easiest way to put it to rest is go out there and play 12, 13 games and do what you do, and everybody will stop talking about it then.
And so just for clarity, there's the question of if he can stay healthy, but is the feeling at least that he is healthy now, or is that still somewhat of a question?
I think that, they liked what he did in the spring.
Okay.
They were pretty comfortable with the progress that he made, not just in terms of, with the offense, because, they do have a new offensive coordinator too. That's significant, right? And so this might have been a bigger spring for him than any of the others, because the continuity was there with your old OC, and now you got a new guy coming in. He's not changing everything. He's you guys know him. Grimes is no fool. He came up here and he saw what he has and he liked it, and so let's just tweak here and there. But overall, we're going to do a lot of the same stuff. But still, it's different. It's a different voice. It's a different presence, and so that was an important part of it. But from day one of spring all the way through the end, we didn't get to talk to him. But at the same time, that the updates we got were we like how he's progressing. He's doing everything he needs to be doing. He's throwing. We saw it in the sort of spring showcase. It wasn't a real spring game, but he was out there for a series or two, and he threw the ball just fine. So I think, yeah, you're always worried about it when that's the situation in the past. But I think they're pretty happy with where he's at. They just hope he can keep moving in the right direction.
They had a great backup situation. Jason Bean could start for a lot of people, but he's gone. So you have a lot of younger quarterbacks, freshmen, sophomores, inexperience. What's next then if Jalen Daniels even has to miss a series because he maybe jammed a finger?
Yeah, no question. Cole Ballard is he's a great story. I mean, he came to KU as a walk-on. He ended up being Bean's backup last year because Jalen was hurt, and it mattered. He had to go in and play the Texas Tech game, and Bean got hurt in the first quarter, and Cole did a great job as a true freshman who was not that far removed from high school football. He's got talent. He's got moxie. He's confident. He's grown a lot physically and mentally. But he also came in with a mental edge that was different than most freshmen. His dad's the GM of the Colts, so he's been around it. Chris Ballard, he's been around it. And I think that puts him on a different plane than a lot of true freshman quarterbacks, because he's seen it at the NFL level. He's been around those guys. He's been in locker rooms, and you just pick things up. Even if you're not actively trying to, you do. You just pick things up when that's your environment. And so he did a great job filling in. Bean missed the rest of that Tech game, and then Cole had to start against K-State. And the reason they lost to K-State had nothing to do with Cole Ballard. I mean, I think he did throw a pick or two, but he played really, really well enough for them to win. So as much as that's very, very limited experience, it's probably enough to where if something did happen, you'd feel fairly confident saying this kid's ready, because he was ready last year, and you wouldn't have expected that. After that, though, they've got a really good freshman, Isaiah Marshall, out of the Detroit area. Phenomenal talent. A lot like Jalen Daniels, really confident, a playmaker with his arm and his legs, mature beyond his years. I mean, you look at the future of that position, and with those two guys, and then they continue to recruit the position too, because, as you improve, as you start to win more games and get a little more recognition, the interest from around the country grows, and people that wouldn't have even given you the time of day, 4 or 5 star kids, they see that Kansas is a player, is a contender, and all of a sudden now you're recruiting that pool instead of what you had been. So they're still adding pieces. They're still adding quarterbacks, still looking at that position. I think everywhere does every year. But those two are solid than they would appear to be on paper. That's for sure. But yeah, if Jalen goes down or can't play, you're putting it in some pretty green hands there. But I think they'd figure out a way to make it work, because both of those kids are highly intelligent, team first guys that just don't seem to be fazed by anything.
Matt, what is your biggest question mark that still revolves around this team? I mean, rosters are still – there's trickling in of guys here and there, obviously. But beyond that, you kind of have a 99% picture, I think, across the country of what teams will look like. So for Kansas, what's still – do you feel like the question mark for them or the missing piece?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think it's the defensive line. They've got names. They've got players. They've got guys who have been out there. But, 2 years ago, they had a guy named Lonnie Phelps, who's, I think, with the Cleveland Browns now. led them in sacks, was a transfer portal guy, came in and just exploded and was phenomenal. Last year, same thing, man. Austin Booker, I think Austin Booker might have led the Big 12 in sacks, and he was a draft pick of the Bears this spring. So, you're looking to replace those two guys. Phelps was gone last year, but it's one right after the next. And I think there's a belief that, hey, we've done this before. The year that Lonnie Phelps blew up, everyone was asking who's going to rush the passer, and then he did. So then he leaves, and then you ask, well, who's going to replace Lonnie? Who's going to replace Lonnie? And then Austin Booker was even better. So I think there's a quiet confidence among the coaching staff that, okay, we'll find the guy, and we've done this before. But you still have to see it. And as well as anybody in this league, if you can't get after the quarterback and make it hard, it's hard on your defense. So I think, I really like their secondary. Their corners are as good as there is in the Big 12. Their linebackers are certainly a unit on the rise. And then I think their offense is as good as anybody at all 4 positions or 5 positions, however you want to look at it. But, man, that D-line, it has to show up. They have to find a pass rusher. And then they also have to be good against the run. And there's no reason to think they won't be. But yeah, you're looking at questions this time of year, and that remains the biggest one for me anyway.
What was your reaction last week to a couple of the business discussions about the Big 12 naming rights being up for sale to add revenue, and then on top of that, the potential that the Big 12 might look with private equity in their future?
I think my reaction was probably the same as everybody's. You kind of give it an eye roll, and then you shrug your shoulders and say, well, I'd do the same thing. I don't love it. I don't love the all-state 12 conference. I think that sounds ridiculous, but nobody asked me, nor will they. And so, if it makes money and it keeps your conference stable in this landscape, sign me up. I think everybody would understand that. I was actually playing in a golf tournament at the country club last week, and that was, between round 2 and 3, that was kind of as we were sitting there eating breakfast, guys were talking about that, right? Like, what did you hear this all-state news, whatever? And one of the guys I was competing against, he looked down the table at the guy who said that, and he goes, you know what? Who cares? It's all different anyway, so who cares? And if that doesn't sum it up, I think that's perfect. I really do. I mean, gone are the days where you're worried about the history and tradition of these proud conferences and all that. I mean, that's all blown up, right? So who cares what it's called? The only thing I would say is if you're going to change the name and you're going to mix Allstate in there, either get rid of the number or make the number the right number. I think if you're going to change it, do that, right? Like, I think it's hilarious that they're keeping the 12 in there if that ends up happening.
I asked Craig that last week. I said, why would they keep the number? Because you know what? If they went to 16 by 2 years from now, it might be 18 or 14. Who knows?
I think that's the catch. You'd constantly possibly be changing the number given what could still happen. But, yeah, I'm with you, though. It seems sort of silly. But, yeah, maybe just leave it for now or just get rid of it altogether. Hopefully we'll have some clarity on the conference realignment front here sooner rather than later. But as you know, Matt, that's a constant conversation that seemingly has no end in sight.
Always. Absolutely right.
Now, when it comes to recruiting, big weekend for Kansas. There's obviously a lot of momentum. I know one of the kind of catches this year is the whole stadium situation, so they won't have, the home stadium to play, and that'll be certainly a huge difference. But that's also a good thing long-term because that means the stadium's getting upgraded. So recruiting and the preseason expectations and the stadium work, and I'd imagine funding's going well and all those types of things. I don't know. Les Miles is in the headlines today, as I'm sure you've seen, because he's not eligible for the Hall of Fame, and so he's suing LSU. But it just made me think of Kansas and where they were and where they are now. Can you even begin to describe just the excitement level around Kansas football in general compared to what you've seen for so many years?
I could try, but it really is hard, man. I mean, you do have to be here, and I think more importantly, you have to have been here, right? Like, It was so low, and it was so bad, rewind 7-8 years ago, even 5 years ago. People had checked out completely. They looked like they were just on the train to nowhere, and they just kept making the same mistakes with bad hire after bad hire after bad hire. And, and you do that long enough and people are going to check out. And then more important than that, people are going to stop believing that you can even get it fixed. And So, I think to understand how great it is right now, you do have to have that intimate knowledge of what that felt like and what that meant to fans, because they were ready to check out in September most years. I mean, it was incredible. And while that's always been the joke as far as like, well, it's basketball season, or when does basketball start? That's always been the joke. Like, it wasn't even just that. It was just like, just please don't make me watch any more football, and so when that's sort of where you came from to being a preseason ranked team, being a team that's talked about as a Big 12 contender, being a team that's even talked about as a playoff team is, I mean, that they're over the moon about it. They love Lance. They love these players. It's not quite the fame and glory and all of that you get with basketball. And I think the reason for that is because these guys wear helmets and there's 100 guys on the roster, and it's just, they're just not quite as familiar across the board. But make no mistake about it, man, Jalen Daniels is a superstar here. Devin Neal is a superstar here. Some of these other dudes are a big freaking deal in Lawrence, Kansas. And so, it really is cool to see, the football program, a lot of people in the athletic department, a lot of people who have been through a lot of that stuff deserve this, because they grinded their way through all those lean years. But the thing that I've always enjoyed, going back to the Liberty Bowl a couple years ago, and then of course last year winning the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, just this last couple years of the resurgence, the thing that I've always enjoyed most is just watching what it's done to Lawrence. I mean, people are so excited and people care, and you get basketball season and sometimes there's 3 games in a week and it's crappy weather, and while everyone's big and they all matter and they're all exciting, there's nothing quite like that one game a week. On Monday you start talking about it, and then by Wednesday you're making plans for tailgating, and then Thursday you're like, oh, it's 2 days away, and just that build that was totally missing, and that I don't really think you get as much with basketball. It's back, man, and you can't go anywhere without talking about football in this town right now, and the last couple of years it's been the same way. So, I grew up here, and this is home for me, and so to see this town re-energized because of this football success, and to see people excited and really united behind it is really cool, and it's long overdue, and you can't give enough credit to Lance Leipold for doing it. You can't give enough credit to Travis Goff, the AD, for hiring Lance and getting this thing going, and then of course it trickles all the way down through the coaches and the players and the staff and all of those guys. I mean, people have put in a lot of freaking work to make this happen, and now they're reaping the benefits. And as I said at the top of this, I mean, they're excited and they feel great about where they've come, but they're not even close to where they want to be. And that's probably the coolest thing, because you look at it and some of these guys are going to be gone, and they're getting guys drafted now, and so you're losing those guys. But instead of panicking like, well, how are we going to figure that out? You feel like the recruiting's on the same pace and page as the program building. And so there's just this trust that's there now, that the fans are like, well, I don't know who they're going to be and I don't know who they're going to get, but Lance will figure it out. And that in and of itself is remarkable. So it's not just this year will be fun and let's see what happens. We're back. That's what people are walking around saying. We're back, and we'll see how long that lasts, and we'll see if that's true. But from the KU fan perspective, that's certainly how they feel.
Matt, one more question on Leipold. We see who he is, basically on occasion when you see an interview with him. He's not one of those that's going to do like the talk show tour, even as popular as people would like to have him on. You see him most of the time. What kind of person is he, and is there a side of him, a softer side of him that most people don't see?
Man, that's a tough question. I don't know if I've ever been asked to go just a straight description of him, but I'll give it my best shot. He's a great dude, first of all. First and foremost, he's a great man. And, I think that is what he leads with. That's what people pick up on right away. He's friendly. He smiles. He'll chat with you. So I think there's an element of people out there that think, well, he's not one of those SOB, tough as nails football coaches. He is. He can be, and he takes it very serious. But he's able to manage and sort of balance the two sides. You know, he can sit down and have a beer with you and have a joke with you and make you laugh like you've never laughed before. At the same time, when it's time to go to work, he'll shut the door and pretend he doesn't know you or anyone else and do his work. And that's how he operates around his team. But the connection with his players is very, very, very strong and real. And, you know, they love him. They love his dry sense of humor. He does crack jokes with them all the time. He's not afraid to push them, but, you know, he pushes them with one hand and then he grabs them back with the other and puts his arm around them. And you know, that's not an easy balance. I mean, there's a lot of football coaches that have one or the other, and it's hard to have both. And I think he does it very well. I know all the, you know, donors and alums and fans that, you know, they love him. And I think at his core, the reason that all of that can work together is because he's a very, very Midwest dude. You know, he grew up in Wisconsin. His wife's from Omaha. They're comfortable here, and they're good people. And you know, they don't believe that they're anything special. I mean, they know what they're doing here is a big deal. But this is what they did at Wisconsin Whitewater. This is what they did at Buffalo, and they're just taking what they did there and bringing it to this level, and it's working the same as it did there. And so for them, yeah, it's a bigger place and it's higher exposure and all that stuff. But for them, life's very much the same. It's just, you know, that maybe you have a few more zeros in your bank account and people know your name a little more than they did. And because you turn this thing around, you know, you're sort of, you know, in favor, and people want to high five you and say hi to you at the grocery store and that kind of stuff. But he loves that stuff. Again, he's a Midwestern guy, and you know, I think he's very comfortable in Lawrence, and I think that's a big part of, you know, you heard his name come up at Washington, you heard his name come up last year at Wisconsin and Nebraska. I mean, you know, KU's done right by him. They were the ones that sort of quote unquote took the chance on bringing him to this level, so there was a loyalty there. But you know, they've also understood that he's damn good at what he does, and that when people come calling, they better make sure that he feels wanted and that he, you know, is compensated the way he wants to be. And they've done a great job, both sides, with managing that. And I mean, I think he's in Lawrence until he's done. I really do. He's found a great fit, and both sides fit. He fits Lawrence, he fits KU, but KU fits him too. And you know, they're on cloud nine right now, man. I mean, the whole department is as good and as healthy as I've seen it, and all these coaches get along, not just within the football staff, but you know, across the department. I mean, you know, Bill Self loves watching football be good. Bill Self loves watching volleyball. Volleyball loves supporting football. On and on and on and on. And KU's got that in a big way right now, better than I've ever seen it, and I've been around a long time.
Matt Tate, thank you very much. Wave the Week covers KU as well as you can. We appreciate your time, Matt. This is 365 Sports.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco, home of a 48-foot walk-in humidor. Padron, Cohiba, Ashton, Macanudo, Romeo, and Julieta. You name it, they have it. The best elite, high-level, world-ranked cigars inside their 48-foot walk-in humidor. My favorite brand is Rocky Patel. They have many different Rocky Patel cigars for you. And Vita Dreams, a CBD product that helps you fall asleep a lot easier and more restful at night. Say you got a lot on your mind, financial, health, emotional, just a really busy week and you're tossing and turning a lot. Vita Dreams will help you find a way to just when you're ready to go to bed 30 minutes or so, hour before, take a Vita Dream, a gummy or two, and you'll be just fine. Think about when the alarm goes off and you go, man, I just wish I had another 30 minutes. Well, you'll get that extra 30 minutes. Try Vita Dreams. THC product for very chronic serious pain. And then also fresh coffee beans. Don Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center. New owner is Josh. Cheyenne is still there, in between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Wake.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoke. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Carry On Solutions is a full-service IT management service provider and provides professional services for businesses servicing clients in the U.S. and globally. They are authorized partners with Microsoft, Quest, Veeam, NetApp, HP Enterprise, and Cisco Duo. Whether you are outsourcing IT services, merging companies, or wanting to tackle cybersecurity challenges, contact Carry On Solutions. We are IT. Call or email Dave at 832-437-0138 or sales at Carry On Solutions. That's CARRION Solutions.com.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
All right, we continue this 4 o'clock hour on 365 Sports. Brian Estridge, the voice of TCU Athletics, has his own thing going on covering the Frogs in Fort Worth. He joins us, David Smoke with Craig Smoke on 365 Sports. Hey, man, how you been? How's your summer? How was Father's Day? We lose him?
You know what? It was all good. Thanks for asking. Yeah, you know what I did? You got me? Okay.
Yep.
It's all good. You know, I've already made our reservations in Vegas. I hope that's okay, David. I've got our reservations that we're going to go to Joe's, get some crab, hang out. You cool with that?
That's good. I can't wait. Let's do that on Monday or Tuesday because we're leaving. We're going to leave right after the show's over, I think, on Wednesday. So, hey, I got a question that has nothing to do really with TCU, but we were just bringing up Colorado and Shedeur and how many teams in the Big 12, if they didn't have to deal with perhaps some of the drama or high maintenance, would take Shedeur Sanders? How many would not take him? If they could have him right now, starting the summer, working out with them to be their starter this fall.
So he doesn't come with his dad. It's just him.
No, it's just Shedeur and straight up his talented quarterback.
Oh, I think 12 of them would, wouldn't they?
I think 12 to 14 of them, yeah.
Who wouldn't take?
Probably Arizona.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who wouldn't take. Yeah, they probably don't need him.
Cam Rising at Utah.
Would Utah?
Yeah, I was. Well, if you know he's healthy.
No, Utah doesn't need him. Arizona doesn't need him. Jalen Daniels, if he's healthy, Kansas doesn't need him. And there's maybe one or two more, but not many. No, he's better than most of the league.
Yeah, I think you take him. I mean, but the problem is it doesn't come without strings attached. So, you know, you got a lot more there. You got a lot of drama you got to deal with. You know, if we're playing the what if.
No, it was just a random question I asked Garrett during the commercial break. So TCU, What a hell of a year
Yeah.
2 years ago. Last year, the step back. We've asked you about it before. We've even asked Sonny Dykes about it and former players about it. So what are the expectations in 24?
You know, I sat in his office today. It's the first time we had a chance to really kind of catch up after spring. And, you know, he is genuinely excited about it, guys. I mean, he thinks that the roster's better. He thinks it's made up with the kind of guys that he wants, that want to be here. I think the offensive line is going to be much improved. It's got to be. Probably can't be any worse. You know, he thinks the young running backs, Cam Cook especially, is going to be, you know, a real weapon for him. The wide receiving room is full. You know, and then you're going to get a defense is going to be much more aggressive with Andy Avalos and defensive coordinator from Boise State. So, you know, he was genuinely excited. And the reason I popped in his office, and you guys have probably had this discussion, is I looked him in the eye and I said, Coach, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how to vote on this preseason team. I mean, I don't know how anyone around the league can put together a preseason all-conference team knowing what we know or knowing the little bit that we know. It's just impossible. And then we started talking about, you know, who should be favorites in the league, who shouldn't. You know, you got to base it on what you saw last year. You know, so obviously Utah's going to be up there. Arizona's going to be up there. Iowa State returns everybody. K-State should be pretty good. But, I mean, after that, don't you just kind of throw them all in a hat and shake them up?
That's what we did.
Yeah, basically.
That's exactly. We unveiled ours last week, and we admitted that. It was kind of somehow laid out in three different tiers. But the guys you mentioned, for the most part, were the ones that we discussed. And then after that, I don't know what, you know, good luck.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. And we don't know what the roster makeup, we don't know what the roster makeup's going to be, you know? I mean, so I think all that sort of changes things. So, you know, but he had an interesting comment, though. He said we were talking about this time in college football, and I was fully expecting him to say, it's really hard being a coach. It's really hard. And he said, you know, it's kind of an exciting time. And I said, really? He said, yeah, because you think about it, the guys that you have right now on this roster really want to be here. You know, the guys that are here know they have to work hard to stay here because, you know, the fellas, as much as people don't talk about it, the transfer portal works both ways, you know? And so as a coach, you never really had that at your disposal. I mean, let's face it, Billy Tubbs, when he was the basketball coach here at TCU, he would fire guys. Yeah, we know that. And they wouldn't be back next year. But, you know, most of the coaches sort of honored the contract and honored the scholarship for 4 years. But that's not the case anymore.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we don't have to look at it that way. But if you're a coach who has a bad team, like, great. You can kind of like push guys out the door a little bit, go grab whoever you want to replace those guys and remodel it. You know, if you lose I know they lost a lot of talent last year, and for different reasons it didn't work out, but that would have been a death nail in old times to lose all the guys that they lost, basically. And instead, they had an opportunity. It didn't work out, but they had an opportunity to go get guys from Alabama and so on and feel like they could not fall off too far.
And, you know, Craig, they kind of took a different approach. You're right. They went and they signed guys from Florida State and Alabama, these bigger programs that didn't have a lot of plays. And thought, okay, well, there's a reason why they're at Alabama, at Florida State, at wherever. They must be pretty good talents. Let's sign them. And they took a totally different approach this year. And they went after guys who had plays. They wanted to see a body of work. They went back to what Sonny has been really good at, you know, since the transfer portal came along, since he, you know, perfected it at SMU and what he did the first year here at TCU. And he went out and he found guys that have played a lot of plays, maybe not all of them at the SEC level. Now, there's some, including a lineman, James Brockemeyer, who I think is going to be really good. But, I mean, I think you've got guys now that are a proven commodity, as instead of just kind of rolling the dice on, hey, he was a 5-star kid coming out of high school, surely he can still play. Now they got guys that are proven commodities that I think will respond much better on game day.
So one of the interesting things about TCU, Brian, there's a lot of interesting things, but Josh Hoover, obviously, you know, quarterback's the biggest position on the field, and we're talking about Shedeur and Cam Rising and Jalen Daniels, and there's some pretty good quarterbacks in this league. Hoover got a lot of playing time last year. He had some big performances. You know, the Baylor game obviously was a huge day and a huge win, but like put up massive numbers of yards against Oklahoma in a loss and threw for 15 touchdowns. What kind of space do you see him in? What are the thoughts around Josh Hoover and just how sturdy he is and just their feelings about how good he can be moving forward?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because I think there are a couple of things that are working in his favor. We talked earlier about the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line has got to be better, and because they were not good last year. And he was running for his life. He was getting banged up. He played obviously hurt, and had the off season where he missed a spring to get better, to get back to 100%. So I think that from that respect, I think he's got a fighting chance because the offensive line is going to be better. Wide receiving core is going to be good, and just having that year of experience under him. This is a guy. He's tough as nails. He's a great kid. But he studies and studies and studies, and he works hard at it. And you guys hear that about other quarterbacks I know around the league. But I think because of that, he's got a chance. The other thing I love about him is his dad was a linebacker at Colorado State, and he coached him from the other side of the ball growing up. And to me, I think there's a real advantage to that. You know what? It's funny. I was looking back. This is an odd thing. It doesn't really matter now, but I was looking back to 2 years ago in high school baseball. I was looking at some high school baseball stats in the state of Texas, and I was looking for a couple of names in there, and Josh Hoover's name kept showing up, and I'd forgotten that he was a really good pitcher coming out of Rockwall Heath as well. But he was, top 10 in ERA and top 10 in strikeouts, and so this is a guy. I mean, we know he can sling it. I don't think there's any question about that, and we know he's going to work hard at it. Can they keep him healthy? Can they keep him upright? I think if that happens, then I'll look for a big year. And by the way, don't sleep on Ken Seals, the transfer from Vanderbilt, who's behind him, who had a pretty good spring, and then Hoss Haney, who's the youngster out of Alito, the true freshman, who I know they want to see in the future be the guy, and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field as time goes on. You'd love to be able to redshirt him, obviously, this year, but I think that room's going to be okay, actually.
By the way, when Craig said that he put up big numbers against Baylor, what quarterback at TCU hasn't had a day against Baylor? Is there a school that TCU plays where it's the opposite? They can't beat them?
Kansas. They don't
really?
Okay. They don't play great against Kansas. For some reason, Kansas has given, even when TCU's been good, Kansas hasn't been good. They've always, I don't know what it is, and especially up there, TCU never plays well. And it's a little different now. There is a little bit of an atmosphere, but for years you go up there and you could play, you can name any kind of things. You're playing at the Heart of Texas Speedway or whatever. But I mean, it's it wasn't it wasn't the atmosphere, I guess, maybe as much as the approach to the game. But Kansas has always been kind of a booger for them, I guess.
So where did you put TCU in your preseason rankings?
That's a good question. Because I admitted this to Sonny, and I debated, do I put him 5th or 6th? And I put him 5th.
Okay.
And I base that strictly on what I saw in the spring. That has nothing to do with the paycheck or where I sit on Saturdays. I had to base it on what I'd seen.
Right.
I saw a much improved defense in the spring, and I saw an offensive line that I knew was going to be better. And so I thought to myself, all right, we're going to go 5 here, and because I was debating 5 or 6, but again, how do we know? How do we know between 5 and 12?
Don't.
That's going to be really. I mean, where do you put Central Florida? Central Florida is one that I'm still like, man, they could finish 2 or 3, but they could finish 10.
West Virginia coming off the year they had when they win 9 games after they were picked dead last, especially like an idiot like me.
Here's the other thing is, somebody's going to be be than we're giving them credit for. Like somebody's going to be that team that wins 7 or 8 games that you're not expecting, because that's typically how it happens too. Yeah.
Right. And Oklahoma State, what do you do at Oklahoma State?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'd never count that guy out. I mean,
no.
The guy can coach.
How many of the, let's say, 100 media who turn in their ballots, we've asked this for about a week, it's been kind of just interesting to get the responses, will not have Utah and probably Kansas State at some point 1 and 2? Does that include you?
Yes.
That's okay.
I have Utah 1 and I have Iowa State 2.
Okay.
Wow. Okay, good.
I'm with you on Iowa State. I think they're
Everybody back, Greg. I mean, it literally isn't everyone back.
Yeah, pretty much every single player. Yeah, I mean, the big difference I think for them is the OC change, but yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody's back.
Yeah, and then I have Kansas State 3.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
and that makes sense.
yeah, and teams that I have lower than other folks may for some reason, and I just can't. I've got BYU lower than probably other folks, and I got Texas Tech lower.
Okay. Yeah, Texas Tech's a curious one. You can make the case for them either way. They are a curious, but they won some close games last year, lost some close ones, but yeah, I got to ask you this though, Brian. Just in general with the conference, it's interesting.
Are we talking about the All-State 12?
Yes, I was going to ask you about
why isn't that banner behind you on the wall?
Yeah,
I know. I should have sold that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, what do you think about the All-State 12, if that in fact is what we're watching here in the near future? And I know private equity is a much more complicated conversation. It's not as black and white as we try to talk through. But what are your thoughts on Brett Yormark? And this is why you brought him in, right? Is to make moves and make money and do outside of the box things to help make up some ground. So what do you think?
And I think this was a trial balloon. I think they floated it to see how we reacted to it, to see what people thought, for one thing. I love and this is not an original thought, I love the idea that someone had that I saw on some tweet that what they should do instead of selling it to Allstate is sell it to Southwest Airlines and then just refer to it as the Southwest Conference.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Let's bring the logo back and everything. Let's just call it the Southwest Conference again.
Golly,
I don't have a problem with it. That doesn't hang me up as much as PE does. When you get into private equity, and I know we're gonna have some PE guys that are listening that they're gonna email me. But when I hear private equity, you know what I hear? Firings and closings and sales.
Yeah.
And so I worry that if PE comes in, they're gonna look up and they're gonna go Cincinnati, West Virginia, Central Florida, Houston. Who name one? Oklahoma State. You guys aren't bringing anything to the table. You're gone. And I just don't think that that's how you operate, man. And that just scares me. And those guys want ROI, man. They want return on investment, and they don't like holding anything longer than 5 years. So you're gonna have to turn that. You're gonna have to flip that $1 billion around in 5 years. I just don't know if there's enough there.
Yeah, we don't have the details of exactly. Like if that was available, they wouldn't need a private equity. If that was truly available, they wouldn't need private equity to help raise that money.
Right, you're probably right.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, if there was anything close to that, they wouldn't need to go that direction.
Yeah, and it's also a case of, because you're right, we don't have the detail. Is it true private equity where you're dealing with a company that that does this, or is this just simply investors? It's a big difference, because if you've got investors and you can get emotion involved, and emotion can be a good thing when it comes to college football. PE has no emotion. They don't care about the individual. They don't care about the school. They don't care about the colors. They don't care about any of that. It is strictly a transactional relationship.
The color they care about is green.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think transactional relationships in college sports are where we get in trouble.
Yeah, and that's one of the things it seems like with all of what's happened business-wise, financially, revenue, et cetera, we've lost a little bit of that. There's still the emotion, but it's more like an angry, or we're better than you, or we're not good enough. That's the part about the innocence which is lost in college football, is that true passion and emotion of loving the damn game.
Yeah, and
the atmosphere.
Yeah, and there was an attitude among a collegiality among leagues and among schools that was there. You think about the Big 12 for years. The Big 12 and partnered up with the Mountain West on certain things, and or kind of brought them along. They were part of the football officials group and things like that. There's always been these relationships that have been out there. They're gone. Now it's the wild, wild west. And so, I mean, if Oklahoma can leave Oklahoma State, it doesn't matter anymore. Relationships do not matter. And I think that's bad.
Yeah, no, and we're seeing that more and more. And whatever it is down the stretch, anything else for Brian?
No,
Craig?
I think we covered a lot.
Look forward to it. What do you have planned? I know you are buckled in all the time because of all your stuff you do for the school, but you have other things you're doing as well. What do you have? Anything in particular? Trip you're taking? Anything?
Well, I'm going to be in Vegas with you. We're going to go eat at Joe's. We'll get we'll get some of those crab claws. I'm going to plan on doing that. And then I got a daughter going to college in the fall, so I got to get her to Atlanta. She's going to play softball at Emory, so I got to get her down there. Yeah. So and then my son's obviously he's at the Air Force Academy playing baseball. So he's
didn't we call you one time when you were watching him play?
I think you were. Yeah. I think I was. Yeah, watching him in Fresno or some glamorous place. Yeah. That's right. You know what Fresno is, by the way, don't you?
No.
It's Lubbock with palm trees. That's what Fresno is.
It's a good tagline for the tourist bureau. Lubbock with palm trees.
If Lubbock had palm trees, it'd be thought of differently. And I know we have a lot of Texas Tech fans that are great viewers, by the way, Brian. Thank you.
And I love Tech and I love Lubbock, but when I was sitting in Fresno watching baseball, I'm going, this is Lubbock with palm trees.
My God. Thank you very much. That's an ender, as Chan Gailey used to say. That's an ender. Yeah. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. The voice of TCU. And we're not done because Jed Drenning joined us many times. Sideline analyst for West Virginia football joins us on 365 Sports. Jed, thank you very much for your time. Last year, Neil Brown in West Virginia had a chip on their shoulder. He said it, told us at Big 12 Media Days. That can't be the case this year, but coaches find ways to kind of get an edge. What is the rallying cry for them this year?
Yeah, Smokey, you're right. It's difficult to replicate being picked 14th in a 14-team league, right? I mean, that kind of jet fuel doesn't come along often. But I have spent the off season trying to petition my fellow media members to do what they can to make sure that we get picked dead last in the league going into this year once again. But I don't think that's going to work. I don't know if many are going to pick us to win it, but I get the sense that most will pick us to be in the mix. So I think what we have to be is a group of self-motivators. I think we are. I like the leadership in this locker room despite what we lost. And I think we're going to be a team with a hard edge.
Has the offseason felt any different given the lack of, I guess, pressure that's sort of been there? Not that pressure goes away entirely, of course, but you still have to go win some more. But did it feel at all different following last season? Just maybe a sense of a lessening of some of that pressure, if you will?
Just like you said, the pressure never goes away. But to Neil Brown's credit, that's not something that he didn't bring that into the building. I mean, none of those types of things were part of any narrative that was going on. And you got to focus on the next game ahead of you and win it anyway. I think that we believed in what we were capable of, which is why in large measure Neil was upset to the extent that he was when that projection came out last year. We thought that we were a couple plays away and a couple games here and there from, instead of being a 5-7 team the year before, for maybe being a 7 or 8 game winning team. But it didn't work out that way. But last year, things did start to come together. I think the biggest difference coming into this year is it's the first time in a while that we feel we have a bona fide, a somewhat established playmaker behind center. And that kind of changes the ebb and the feel and the vibe of everything to begin with. So when you have a guy like Garrett Green coming back, when you have Nico Marchiol returning to back him up, that says something about the program, and I think that gives you a little bit of swagger as well.
So, yeah, I love the way he plays the game, Garrett Green. I love the way it's like he wears his emotions on his sleeves. He's tough. He's better than you think, and sometimes that might be, he's not that perfect-looking quarterback, but my God, he seems to be an incredible leader too. And not saying he's a leader is misjudging his talent, but he just, I want to go into a foxhole with him.
Yeah, Neil likes to call him an energy giver. Some people, we talk about energy vampires that will steal your energy from you and bring down a room. Well, there's a certain energy, a certain glow to Garrett when he comes around. He's never having a bad day. That really resonates with his teammates and really resonates with anybody who spends some time with them. So there's a lot to be said for that. So setting aside the skill set and the dynamic playmaking ability, just in terms of what he can accomplish within the confines of a locker room, I've always said that, first and foremost, the biggest job a quarterback has is to make those around him better and get the most from those around him. And Garrett Green can certainly do that.
Jed, trying to position everybody in the Big 12 is a difficult task, as I'm sure you've found that as well. Everybody trying to do their preseason polls and everything. How did you kind of sort through the madness, if you did already, and where did West Virginia fall in your mind when trying to feel out where the conference goes through 16 teams?
Well, you want to start by being in the mix, but it's far more important, as we know, to be in the mix in November. If you're playing meaningful football in November, that's really what you aspire to. And I think we've put ourselves in position to do possibly that. I think there is so much incredible parity in this league. I think it's going to come down to a function of two things. Which team is the most consistent? Because literally there's no empty chairs. Anybody can beat anybody, and that's not lip service, on any given Saturday or Thursday or Friday night. And the other thing is going to be who stays the healthiest. So whoever is the most consistent and plays relatively good football week in, week out without laying a dud here and there, or doesn't lay many duds, and whoever stays the healthiest. And I think West Virginia is in the mix of one of those teams that can certainly do that. And if we do, there's no reason to think that we don't at least have a chance to be fighting for a spot at Jerry World come December.
So what is their issue, or what aren't so sure about as they head into the season?
Well, we have a lot of replacement pieces on the defensive side of the football. I mean, defensively, we were retooled with some portal kids last year, starting with Beanie Bishop. I mean, you talk about a sales pitch for portal kids. We're able to look at portal kids and say, this guy parachuted in, was on campus for 7 months, and became the 13th consensus All-American in the history of the program. How's that for portal? You know, so that's the sales pitch that Neil and the staff and Jordan Leslie and the defensive staff have been positioned to offer. And we jumped last year, guys, from when it comes to a passes defended standpoint. I found myself talking about PBUs and passes defended more last year than any point in my entire adult life. You didn't realize 2 years ago how often we were out of position and didn't even get a chance to make a play on the football. We went from 121st in the country 2 years ago in passes defended to 21st last year. So in large measure, that was because of Beanie Bishop and what he brought to the table. So now the question is, can one of these new portal kids, in addition to what we return, fill that void? And we like to think we're a little longer, we're a little more athletic on the defensive back end, and maybe we can do that. The other question mark would be, last year we surprised a lot of people with our robust depth on the defensive line. Now, we still feel we can be very productive with our top unit and even our top couple units. But guys, last year we sometimes went 8, 9 deep, cycling guys in and out without missing a beat. I'm not so sure the composition of this defense will be the same as that. So we're going to have to make up for it in other ways. And we feel, for instance, that maybe this linebacker room, which has a real chance to be potentially not just the strength of the defense, but maybe the strength of the team, we'll see. So those are the things that have to fall into place for us. Now, on the offensive side, you don't replace Zach Frazier. You certainly don't replace him or Doug Nestor. But we had 7 guys start games up front on the offensive line last year. We returned 5 of them. We do feel that the anchor of this unit is a potential first-round pick at left tackle in Wyatt Milam. He's the new leader of that group. So we're confident with where things are there. A lot of young receivers returning, including Cole Taylor and the production he brought at tight end. We brought some additions in the portal on the perimeter. It's just a function of how many of these things are going to fall into place. I do think we're expected to take another step offensively. I don't know if we'll be expected to do so defensively, but I think we can.
Jed, I had a question from S. Michael DeHart, huge West Virginia fan. We've got a lot of Mountaineer fans who are a part of our audience. When will they unveil the Coal Rush uniforms? Is there a specific week or a game you think they'll do that?
You know, there's not part of the Thunder. There was a great debate among Mountaineer fans. Hey, if Penn State's a night game, wouldn't you love to see that? Roll them out then. And then there's some people saying, I don't know about the Penn State game. That's a regional rivalry game. We got to go with the old gold and blue in that one, and maybe later. But now it's to the point I'm not sure, because Penn State's a noon kickoff. You're certainly not doing it then. The next week's an FCS opponent, a later kick under the light, sure, but I don't know if you'd do it then. So I think that's kind of up in the air and to be determined.
All right, speaking of Penn State, last year when the season began, because there was so much like man, there's a dark cloud. Is Neil Brown going to survive the year, et cetera? It was 38-15, but it didn't seem that way. Penn State scored late, but it was a game that was very competitive for probably most of it until the last score. And that seemed to like give them a little bit of a boost. Does it all kind of ride on the atmosphere of this team based on Penn State, or is that putting too much into one game?
I think that could kickstart things for sure. I think one of the big differences, let's start with this. Penn State, as you guys know, is going to be a top 10 team once again.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be incredibly deep and talented, most likely a playoff team in this new 12-team format. They're the real deal, absolutely. The biggest difference that I see will be instead of playing in a sold-out Beaver Stadium in front of 110,000 people, the largest crowd to ever watch West Virginia play a football game, we're going to be playing in front of a sold-out Mountaineer Field. Now, noon or no noon, don't read too much into that. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. You're going to spend all summer hearing about this as Fox promotes it. It's going to be a big deal. Mountaineer fans are certainly going to be the 12th man and have this team's back on August 31st against a very talented Penn State team. But a couple things to look at. Last year, despite all the talent and depth on the Penn State defense, we were still able to somewhat effectively run the football. Ran for 140 yards plus. Smokey, as you talked about, it was a ball game well into the third quarter. It was 14-7. The problem that we encountered, we did what you can't do in that type of environment against that kind of team, and we blinked. We had a penalty, bring back a 20-plus yard run. That stole our mojo. The next thing you know, they drove down and scored and started to separate, and it was a different ball game. But we can't let those types of things happen. We're a double-digit underdog at Mountaineer Field, or at least at this juncture we are. The last two times we were a double-digit underdog at Mountaineer Field, we actually won the game. So interesting vibe to this football game against an incredibly talented Penn State team. I mean, this would be the signature marquee win that Neil Brown and this group would love to have, no doubt about it.
Any thoughts, and I know it's all very much unofficial stuff, and it's just maybe trial balloons being floated by the conference office, who the heck knows, but any thoughts on just some of the stories involving the Big 12 last week, the renaming and the private equity thing? It's very complicated. I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of that, but any particular thoughts on just your mark kind of going for it all, going for things to make the conference better, although there might be some pushback on that?
There's certainly going to be some pushback because not everybody's ready to embrace these changes that, for good or for bad, are necessarily taking place. But in a power structure of college football, which is where we currently reside, with in effect a power two. I mean, let's be real about this. When you look at the financials of the SEC and the Big Ten, it's a power two. So others are trying to scramble to best position themselves as that next league in. And I think really the Big 12 and your mark have done a better job than anybody else at doing that and filling that vacuum. And I think what Brett Yormark's trying to do, and he's been doing this since the day he took the job, is to create as many non-traditional revenue streams as he can come up with to try and play catch or try and pursue what the SEC and the Big Ten have done in terms of cashing those checks, because this all comes down to who's cashing the biggest checks, because whoever is will be the most competitive. So the more you can do to close that financial gap, the better off you're going to be and the greater you're going to be served. So if we can do things that maybe the ACC and the others aren't doing, I'm all for it. I'm for anything that in the grand scheme of things from a brand equity standpoint makes the Big 12 more appealing to our TV partners and, just importantly, more appealing to potential players that might want to be part of.
Jed, as you know, we get a media poll, preseason poll. Joni Lehman sends that out. We have to send it back. We all did. We opened up our polls, preseason rankings last week. Was it – I don't know why, but for whatever reason, this year it seemed to be easier, even though there looks like a traffic jam from anywhere between like 5 and 9 or 10. Was that something that kind of flew off your pen or your laptop or whatever when you put yours together?
Yeah, it's very interesting. First of all, when you look at the 4 newbies, how are we going to assess that? I think we'd all have to start with Utah and go from there, right? I mean, in terms of the success that they've had in the Pac-12 and what they've done there and what they have coming into this league. I think you'd have to start there, and that's not to discount the others, but I think people would be looking even more favorably at Arizona if not for the coaching transition. Sometimes those transitions are seamless, sometimes they're not. So that's the only variable that we don't know about. If Jed Fish was still there and everything was still intact, because boy, are they still returning some talent at quarterback and a receiver and at some key spots. So it's difficult to read how that might play out. When you look at some of the, the older return teams from the Big 12, Oklahoma State, look, they had some deficiencies on the defensive side of the football, but when you have a bell cow feature back like Ollie Gordon and you have Mike Gundy running the show, it is impossible for me to count the Cowboys out, especially with 20-plus returning starters, 8 offensive linemen who have started significant games at the college level. It's really hard for me to not say Oklahoma State's going to be sniffing right there toward the top. And I don't understand. Yes, Will Howard's a big loss, but they have talent and explosiveness, Kansas State does, behind center. I'm not so sure why they're not getting a little more love. And then things get really murky and really messy because here come the West Virginias, here comes Iowa State, here comes Kansas with what's Lance Leipold's done. It's just, once again, even 10 years ago, I've tried to tell Mountaineer fans, back in 2016, our 1-10-win season as a member of the Big 12 with Dana Holgerson, look, back in those days, that was still not just the Kansas team that you could show up and play poorly and win by 4 touchdowns, but even an Iowa State program at that juncture that you could count on for an easy win. So there's your 2 W's that you start with. Now, what do you do from there? No such easy W's exist in this league. Again, that's not lip service. You guys, I'm preaching to the choir. I get it. But there are no empty chairs on this schedule. I mean, you telling me I don't care how much BYU struggled against Big 12 competition. Do you want to go to Provo and see how that goes? I mean, there are no layups on this schedule, and that's what makes it so difficult to forecast.
Yeah, I think, and I don't know what's going to happen with Penn State, West Virginia, but the Big 12 needs those games. They need some wins like that early on to kind of catch some attention. I hope they get it. Obviously, love to see the Mountaineers open up with a win against a highly ranked, as you said, team out of Penn State. Jed, great stuff, man. Hope you have a chance to decompress a little bit this summer. We'll see you soon. And also, of course, have you on as many times as we can between now and the football season and ending in December or January. Thank you.
Appreciate that, guys. You enjoy.
Jed Drenning, sideline analyst for West Virginia Radio.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports. The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
All right, 365 Sports, we take you up very close to 6 o'clock. Thank you very much for your time as you give it to us every day as we continue to grow. The numbers we mentioned, the subscriber base has gone crazy good, and we appreciate that. And a lot of it's because hopefully what we bring to you with content, including this one. SMU Director of Athletics Rick Hart joins us on 365 Sports with us, what a week it's been for them. The announcement of the fundraising, $159 million, July 1st, the ACC. Rick, we've had you on before when there was a possibility. We even had you on back when there was even thoughts about maybe, is there a chance that the Big 12 could be on the horizon? When you look at July 1st, do you circle that like a team does with a rival when the schedule comes out?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate y'all having me. Congrats on your growth that you were just talking about, and thanks for what you do to promote and celebrate sports in the great state of Texas. We appreciate it. July 1st will be, really the culmination of 35 years of investments and persistence, and and it'll be a surreal moment, the latest in a series of them. But that's when this will all be official and real, and we can't wait for 10 days from now when we're able to celebrate with Dallas and the SMU communities.
Rick, I drove by campus the other day on the way to Love Field, and a lot of construction going on around the stadium. I know you got a lot of projects going on. Can you just kind of speak to where you guys are? You got big opponents arriving here in the next few months. I know there's still a little bit of time, but just how do you feel about all the changes going on and preparing for this upcoming season?
Yeah, it's a daunting task, but it's one that is fueled by again, the energy of this opportunity and the moment, the enthusiasm of not just the SMU alumni and donors, but again, the Dallas community. So we're having a lot of fun with it. There is a lot of work to do. The construction, they say that if there's not a crane on campus that you're falling behind. And so, you got to continue to invest in facilities. The Weber End Zone Complex, which is what you see on Mockingbird, is a 190,000 square foot football operations building with about 1,200 all premium seats. A training table for all of our student athletes. It'll be state of the art. It'll benefit all 17 programs in some way. And, the timing of Gary Weber's investment, his $50 million gift to get that off the ground and make it possible, I think was one of the critical components to the invitation to the ACC. And so we'll move in at the end of July, and again, and that'll continue to be a big key in our recruiting and in building a championship level football program as well.
I know that there's hunger to get into that conference, and there's been this long. You mentioned nearly 40 years. It's an obvious question, and I think I know the answer, but I have to ask the question: how much of that 159 do you think is attached because of what you're about to do and what conference you're about to enter?
Well, it's the reason for the record. No two ways about it. Again, the strength of our donor base has always been a differentiator for us and a competitive advantage. Our donors have always punched above our weight class and helped us to close the gap competitively so that we could, effort to compete nationally, which, by the way, I think we've done quite well across our 17 sports. Leading into the ACC, but this moment can't be replicated. And there was a sense and a belief that, when we achieved ACC membership and, as David Miller said, got back where we belonged, that there would be an entirely different level, not just to the existing support base, but also many people who would just respond to the magnitude of the moment. And that's what occurred. I mean, 100 million of it can be directly attributed to the First Week Society. That's the group of individuals that within a week of the invitation on September 1st, 2023, pledged $100 million towards our competitiveness in the ACC.
So, you have all this construction, you have all this momentum. Do you have to, you were a North Carolina grad it's been a long-time member of the ACC. You were at Oklahoma for, I think, 7 years or so before UT Chattanooga. You've been around SMU for quite some time. Do you still at times have to pinch yourself that this is happening?
Yes, absolutely. Again, I mean, so I've been at SMU for 12 years. And so, I haven't been here, obviously, the entirety of this journey, but certainly long enough to feel and to appreciate, again, all of the little moments and big moments that made July 1st, 2024 a reality, and what it means to our community and to Mustangs everywhere. And so it's not lost on me. Again, I do pinch myself. I mentioned that it's still surreal at times. I think that's going to continue as we get into competition and we host our first men's soccer game against an ACC opponent, and then women's soccer, and then football, and then volleyball, and so on. Obviously, the September 28th game against Florida State, I think it's going to be a really special day on the hilltop.
By the way, when you have that game, you need to make sure that you have private investigators watching for one of our co-hosts. He's on vacation. Paul Catalina is an FSU grad. You cannot, please, allow him in that stadium because he's like drooling over the opportunity.
Well, tell Paul if he's just throwing an SMU hat, I'll host him in my suite.
Hey. Oh, my God. You know what? I know he'll do that. He went to a KU men's basketball game with his wife, Amanda, and he's never had any alliance or allegiance to them, and he bought like a KU jersey and wore it, even though he covers Baylor here, but we cover all of the Big 12 and also college athletics, as you mentioned earlier. I will absolutely pass that along to him. With the
it's just going to have to be a Mustang for the day. That's all we ask. He doesn't have to be. You don't have to be his number one team or his favorite team all the time. But for that day, he's got to be a Mustang.
I love it. All right.
Rhett Lashley's a terrific coach. We've had him on the show and really appreciate every time that he's joined us. There's obviously a lot of juice when it comes to the football program right now. How much more energy do you feel, not just in terms with the football program, but in recruiting and the attention and maybe some of the reception that football and other sports are starting to receive, knowing the affiliation that you're now going to be a part of? Is there a noticeable difference already in that regard, much like there is with, let's say, donors and things of that nature?
There is. That's another one where I'll tell you, we always felt that the one thing we were missing was this affiliation with the ACC or, a power conference, so to speak. And it was really the only limiter or limiting factor in our recruiting success, our competitive success, our ability to attract and retain the best coaches, et cetera. And that's proven out. I mean, I think it's well documented, and you asked specifically about football, so I'll talk about that. One of the ways that we have strung together 10-win seasons and a national ranking to end the season and some big-time wins. We're the winningest program in the state of Texas the last 5 years in the sport of football, has been through transfers who are from the area, but out of high school, for various reasons, didn't commit to us. We were in the mix. We could get in their final 3 or 5. But at the end of the day, they felt like they wanted to play against, quote, the best, and they wanted to play in one of those conferences. And now what we're seeing across all our sports is that those young men and women are now saying they want to come to SMU out of high school because they don't feel like they need to leave Dallas to compete against the best and at the highest level. So it's a game changer in every way.
Rick, as you have this celebration, and really it's been ongoing, as you mentioned, since it was confirmed that you were going to join the ACC. As you know, the landscape in college athletics is crazy. Not just NIL, the portal, et cetera, now revenue sharing. How much do you have to keep your eye on what is happening in the courtroom right now with the ACC, Florida State, and others?
Well, we're certainly paying attention nationally, and I'm part of those conversations relative to the national litigation, the House settlement, and by extension, the settlement potentially of several other cases, and how we're going to need to be thinking about that, how we're going to need to be structured, how we're going to need to resource it. So those conversations are ongoing. Obviously, there's a lack of clarity, but there's a lot of scenario planning going on, and we'll be ready. We'll adapt, and as we've done and continue to do, we'll make sure that SMU is well positioned and that we're ready to compete at that level. Relative specifically to Clemson and Florida State and the ACC, I don't really expend any energy on that. Number one, I have no control over it. But secondly, we're excited. I mean, that has not detracted one bit from our enthusiasm about membership in the ACC or what we think that will mean, not just to our athletics program, but to the university to affiliate with those schools. So we feel like, hopefully this group will be together a long time and it'll stay intact. But should something happen down the road, again, we feel like we're well positioned. We're part of that Power Four group now, and we're focused on SMU and what we need to be doing to compete at that level and to prove that we belong.
After being a part of Group of Five or whatever, again, other conferences outside of the what they called the Power Five, now Power Four, as you're a part of that, with how things have changed, with revenue sharing, can you, and it's a challenge even for those who are the alphas, who have all the money in the world, how difficult do you think it would have been to go into the next part of SMU football or athletics if you weren't a part of the ACC with the revenue?
Well, we talk about that pretty regularly, and the fact that while we are going to have some significant challenges ahead and some things that are going to require some tough decisions and probably, some different ways to approach what we do and how we impact young men and women, boy, we sure are glad that those are the things that we're working on and talking about and efforting towards, because that's the group we want to affiliate with, and those are the types of problems we want to be bringing solutions to. So, again, we understand change is coming. It's constant. We understand that there are threats to, the model long term and conference affiliation that you alluded to earlier, perhaps. But we are just so grateful because now that we're part of those 70 schools, we feel like that has staying power and that's an environment that we can be very competitive in over both the short and the long term. So, we got in just in the nick of time is how we talk about it.
I've even seen some quotes from an AD or two that are a part of what you could consider, alpha. I mean, they have they have all the money, the logo and all of that. And yet sometimes I see them say that they're concerned about making sure they can keep all their other sports afloat. And yet a lot of it's because a lot of them have moved and have created a lot of this where we are today. Will you do everything possible to make sure, and with the $159 million and whatever else, that SMU stays its course with what you have across the board right now that you mentioned that's been so successful?
Yes. I mean, again, we're going to have to prioritize, and we're going to have to, do some things differently, as will everyone. So, when you talk about even the biggest brands with the most money, and they're still contemplating how they're going to do this, how they're going to resource it. The reality is all of us have allocated 100% of the resources we have available to us today. And the cost of doing business goes up every year. And 22% of everything we do today and going forward is going to be allocated to the student athletes. And so that means that we're going to have to reprioritize. We're going to have to look at how we can be more efficient from an expense perspective. We're going to have to generate additional revenues. The $159 million is critical, but it's also, we can't stop there. We need people to give. We need people to buy tickets. We need people to bring a friend. We need people to continue to challenge themselves and stretch themselves to support us, and we need to bring new people to the table. I think the key for us is going to be, relatively speaking, when the dust settles and we have clarity around what does that look like for Florida State, for Clemson, for North Carolina, for Duke, for Wake Forest, for Virginia, et cetera, that we need to be able to compare favorably and to compete in that environment, and relatively speaking, to provide an experience to our student athletes and benefits to our student athletes and compensation to our coaches and a quality of life to our staff that is on par with all those other schools.
Last thing, Rick, and again, man, it's always great to have you on the show. You've always been there when we've asked, and we do appreciate it with all that's going on, not to mention you try to get home, I'm sure, is once the announcement was made, Cal, Stanford, SMU, and then some of the details about the money, the TV revenue, and whatever, and then it came back and it kind of adjusted itself where you are going to get some of that money. How important was that to even win that little battle right there, even though all of them are big battles?
Yeah, like every dollar counts, and I'm on my way now to an event with our men's basketball coach and some former players and some donors. So it again, the engagement level, the revenue piece never stops. But it was big, and the key there was to ensure that we were going to, at least from the very beginning, not take a step back from a revenue perspective, and then going forward. Again, the opportunities and or the guaranteed revenues were going to move us in a positive direction. People have said, well, gosh, you gave up all that money. We didn't give up any money. We were never going to have that money. We were never going to get that money in any other scenario. And so what we did is, again, there are positive revenues that will accrue to us, but the opportunities that we have now to go out and significantly generate revenues in other categories is unmatched. There's nothing else we could have done to bring these opportunities to bear, not just for athletics, but again for SMU. And so we view it as an investment. We view it as a net positive from a revenue perspective, both short term and long term. And then again, thanks to our generous donors, kind of where we started this conversation, they're helping us close the gap competitively in those buckets that for a few years we won't participate in.
Last thing, can you now also be a voice of reason and knowledge to all of those who are the FBS that are in the Power 4 conferences about what the Group of 5 or other schools still need to make sure that you've been a part of that and that they are taken care of?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I haven't thought through that part of it, but I will say that one of the things that I've tried and will continue to effort to bring to the ACC and to that group of athletics directors and leaders is, I think, a perspective that this is an awesome thing. Mm-hmm. And this is a powerful thing, and we are all incredibly fortunate to be a part of it and to affiliate with one another. And yes, there are challenges, and again, we can go back through all that stuff, but everybody has those. We're no different. There's only one that's ever going to have the most. Right now, that's not us. But let's not lose sight of the incredible conference that we're a part of, the success that it's already having and can have in the future. And let's come together to ensure that that future is healthy and that we continue to grow and to advance our position among all the conferences.
Thank you. Good luck on July 1st, man. I know that's going to be an amazing day. We'll be having somebody on that day to also discuss that celebration. Rick, thank you. Congratulations on everything you've been able to accomplish. I know, as you said, a lot of work to be done for everybody. Enjoy that event. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you. It's going to be goosebump moments on July 1. I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah. Thank you. You too. Rick Hart, the Director of Athletics at SMU. Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco. Right now with training packages, 6 one-hour sessions for $340 or $60 for one session. 30-minute sessions for $190 for 6. Randall Corley, Lori Hole, Robin Nelson, Nathan Roach, and Christy London are the personal trainers at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness. And oh, by the way, Father's Day coming up. Spoil your father the healthy way. Get your father what he wants. Visit the Pro Shop for closeout pricing on all Technofiber rackets at $119, a personal training package, a tennis or pickleball clinic gift card, or maybe even a membership. Camp Fimpo, partnership for day passes. Excited to partner with Camp Fimpo just down the road on Lakeshore Drive. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness members will now receive $5 off Camp Fimpo day passes. Hawaiian Falls Water Park special season pass offer exclusively for Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness members. $49.99. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness season pass, $10 savings with exclusive offers beyond unlimited admission for a season pass at Hawaiian Falls Water Parks right next to Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas. Also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Catalina out this week. He'll be back on Monday. David Smoke, Craig Smoke, 365 Sports. And we have heard and discussed some of whatever private equity might mean. The Big 12, of course, that came up last week as a conversation. Even Florida State has looked at the possibility of using private equity as they try to get themselves out of the ACC. So Sam Laughlin, Chief Executive Officer, Paceline Equity Partners in Dallas. He graduated from both Texas and also earned a degree at Baylor, joins us on 365 Sports. Sam, thank you very much for your time. We do appreciate you. What is the main goal of, and you're a part of it, you're the Chief Executive Officer, what is the main goal of a private equity?
One, thanks for having me on, evening. But bottom line, to make money for your investors. Private equity is kind of an elastic term. It covers a lot of different types of investments. But at the end of the day, they're all designed to return positive cash flow to their investors.
So, Sam, there's been some kind of I think it bogs down the conversation. It's like, hey, private equity, and I've seen folks quickly go, no, this is private investment. Is there a true separation? You just mentioned both terms there, but is what we're talking about in this case private investment, or is it private equity, or is it still the same thing for us, us dummies out there?
Well, again, yeah, private equity is what you would call a suitcase term. Credit fits into it, leverage buyouts fits into it, lots of different types of investment strategies. The details around what the Big 12 is doing are pretty scant, but it looks like it's an equity investment, meaning the investor here, the private equity firm, would be buying a percentage of effectively the future cash flows of the conference.
It's a conference that doesn't have, it's making money. They have a really good TV deal, but nothing compared to the Big Ten and the SEC. And the ACC is about where the Big 12 is, give or take a little bit. If they get it's an infusion of money, but how does the Big 12 make enough money to pay that back?
Well, they've got to grow. The valuation details have been kind of all over the map, from $800 million to $1 billion, from 10% to 20%. But let's just do simple math. Private equity investor puts $1 billion into the conference, which can be distributed to those conference members, the schools, for which they're going to receive 10% of all future cash flows that come off of the league. Right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I think I saw maybe $470 million is what was doled out to the schools. So if it's $1 billion for 10%, that's a 20-year payback, and private equity is not going to be interested in those type of returns. So either they're going to take more of the conference, more of the future cash flows, or they're banking on a tremendous amount of growth to generate the types of returns they need to hit.
Sam, when you first saw this story, and as you said, it's still scant on a lot of the details, but when you first saw this, it's not the first time we've heard private equity involved, and there's been the examples of, the NBA and pro sports and all that. But when you first heard this in the Big 12, what were just your initial thoughts as far as that type of a partnership, and would it make sense or not?
Complicated. That was the first word that came to my mind, because are you going to be aligned as a conference? The private equity owner is going to want as many members as possible, right? They're going to want to see growth. And they don't really care whether it's an equitable distribution amongst the schools. They just want their 10%, in our example, to grow. Whereas the conference may look at a college and say, this college doesn't deserve an equal share, or maybe shouldn't even be a member, or we need to swap them out for a bigger TV market. And you potentially have a lack of alignment. And then who your partner is day one, but they're ultimately going to want to sell their investment. I don't think they're going to, hold it in perpetuity, depending on what type of vehicle they're investing out of. Typically, they're thinking in 5 to 7 year terms. Who's going to be your buyer? What kind of restrictions or approval rights is the conference going to have? Can CDC sell it to the Chinese government or Trump media, or people that the board of directors don't necessarily want as partners? So it's a complicated deal because it's never been done, at least at the collegiate level, and making sure everybody's aligned to the outcomes. And Big 12 needs to be careful. These guys are going to be smart, and they're in it to make money, and they're only limited by their creativity. So they're gonna try to set this up as best they can for them to generate the highest returns possible. Hopefully that's mutually beneficial, but not necessarily.
So whatever it ends up being, $800 million or $1 billion, whatever, 16 teams in the Big 12. Are you saying that if in fact somebody was to be a partner with the Big 12, or whatever that term would be, would they then want decision making on if somebody's not carrying their weight and request they be moved out of the conference? Is that something that could be a part of the discussion?
It's definitely going to be part of the discussion. What rights they have as investors, what rights the conference has as far as their investment. So those investor rights will be heavily negotiated. For the minority interest that's being discussed, I wouldn't expect the private equity partner to have much control, except the ability to protect itself against certain actions. If we were talking about private equity coming in and buying 51% of the Big 12, well, then it's no longer really a college conference. It's a privately held company being run for profit. So, at these levels, I think the conference would still be in firm control, and all they're doing is, at $1 billion, they're accelerating 2 years of cash flow so they can distribute that out, but giving up, future 10% or 15 or 20% of future cash flows in perpetuity.
So, Sam, you said something. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said something earlier that just caught my attention as far as adding. So, do you think that a private equity, in order to ensure more of a chance of return on their investment, would want expansion, for example, of, hey, I know you talked about like having say on teams potentially and things like that, but in theory, would they want like, hey, we need 8 more schools because that's 8 more potential revenue streams that add to the pile to get us our money back? Or would it be more along the lines of like, let's stay status quo? Or do you get what I'm saying there?
They're going to want the most revenue growth that they can get.
Yeah, just period.
Whether that's naming it the, all-state conference, licensing deals, they're going to want as much revenue period as they can get. Yeah, full stop. They want growth. And it's the only way it makes sense, because at these valuation levels, it's too slow a payback. They're going to want to see more than $50 million coming in. They're going to want to start to see $120 million and really drive that revenue. And the Big 12 has the ability to, accelerate some cash flow, invest in their programs, and hopefully, put themselves in a position for that growth outside of expansion, but, putting quality product on the field so that TV channels will pay more money for it, right? Those broadcast rights.
How do private equity firms make money, and where do the investors come from? How does that work?
Yeah, when you're talking private equity firms the size of those being discussed around this deal, it's primarily institutional investors, everything from sovereign wealth funds to pensions, to university endowments, to large family offices, but primarily all institutional investors. And, a typical private equity setup, the investors make a commitment to that private equity firm that they will fund investments up to a certain amount for an investment period of, call it 4 years or 5 years. And the private equity firm makes money off of what's called promote, or a general partner interest, basically a profits participation above some set return. Let's call it an 8%, above an 8% internal rate of return, or IRR. The private equity firm enjoys 20% of those profits. And that's, plus they have management fees, but at its core, the best alignment is they should be making money off of outsized returns that they're delivering for their investors.
So, Sam, this is, according to various, folks who've asked around, just very much something. I mean, your Mark's got a background in this, partnerships, things of that nature. So it makes sense where it's coming from. But, not everybody's like, all right, we're doing this and we're moving ahead. It's not officially done by any means. But I think you kind of, said this earlier. But do you think private equity is something that makes sense for college sports, an entity like the Big 12 in their positioning? Or do you think, like there is a lot of doomsday naysayers of like, oh my God, you welcome this in and it's all over college football as we knew it? Do you have any hard stance at all, either way on that topic?
I think college football as we knew it's already over.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It's a business now, with NIL money and the transfer portal. I mean, it's a business. And it's always been a business, but they at least tried to pretend it was about the student athletes.
Right.
Now it's about the money, and it's about being competitive. So, attracting investors, you're going to look for the lowest cost of capital, whether that's a loan, whether that's selling equity. But if you're outside the Big Ten and the SEC, you're having to get creative to try to survive and be relevant.
If you don't mind me asking, do you recommend the Big 12 do this?
I would have to know a lot more about the details of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I can see why the Big 12 is exploring it. The ability to improve their facilities, put a little more NIL money out there, get better players, better products, put themselves in a better position to stay competitive with these other two super conferences. I can see why they're exploring it, and I see the industrial logic of it. But you just really have to think through all the unintended consequences of it. It's just never been done, and you are a business now. The veneer's gone, and you've got a partner, and that partner wants a return on its capital, and that's just going to require a real full mental shift into running a business versus a university college athletics program.
Would the private equity that infuses that money into, let's say, the Big 12, do they get a say in where that money goes towards NIL or coaches being retained or facilities, things like that?
I think that's all going to be on the negotiating table. I'm sure they want to see that money utilized to grow revenue for the conference, right? So they don't want to see it going into places that are not going to generate a return on investment. At the same time, the universities are going to want as much flexibility as they can have with their money, and they're selling their interest. So I think that's going to be a heavily negotiated point. How this capital is going to be used to grow revenue for the conference.
As somebody that's in private equity, again, Paceline is what you do. You're the chief executive officer. You went to UT, you went to Baylor. You've seen what's happened in college football. Obviously, Texas has this massive budget and what they're doing. They've kind of separated, being a part of the SEC, and Baylor and the Big 12 are trying to play catch-up. What do you think when you hear that maybe from either the uneducated or people who just maybe don't know that private equity is a bad thing? I mean, that's what you do for a living. You're incredibly successful. So is your company. But are there people that just don't know enough about it, and so they feel like people are selling their soul?
Look, private equity is made up of thousands of funds, and there's good actors out there, and there's bad actors. There's good investors. There's some that don't last that long. Private equity typically uses leverage, which creates risk. But they're doing it to generate better returns on their capital. When they do it prudently, they generate spectacular returns. When they do it imprudently, it can cause a company to fail. And there's examples of both throughout private equity's history. I think it would be up to the Big 12 to structure this in such a way that it doesn't create risk for the conference, and is simply a cash infusion. But if it gets structured as a preferred equity interest or a loan, they're injecting some risk into how well the conference will perform financially that doesn't exist today. But they're also looking at the world changing around them. They got to do something, right? I love Baylor. Graduated in '94, undergrad there. Big 12's on borrowed time if it can't find a way to compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. Right now, it looks like it's like a rocket fuel. The rockets take it off, and there's only two conferences attached to it. We'll figure out what happens with the ACC. So if they contacted you, and I don't know, maybe they have, or other
No, they haven't.
Okay. But if they contacted you, what would be a couple of questions you would ask them if they wanted you to help infuse the money into the Big 12?
Well, starting with the cash flows and understanding all the sources of revenue, understanding how often that revenue can be changed. So with the TV contracts, what is it, every 5 or 7 years, you're looking at how much growth can we get there, what naming rights, what are all the assets, and what are all the cash flows, and where can we predict that there is growth that's going to generate a solid return on our equity investment. After you get comfortable with the financial profile, it's then going to get into the negotiation of control rights and when can I sell my interest? Do I have a preferred return until I get my capital back? There's just a lot to negotiate, but it's going to begin with understanding the cash flows. How much cash is going to come off this league for how long, and at what rate can we expect it to grow?
Yeah, and would that be something that a private equity would want in a short-term, long-term type, I guess, lens that, okay, what can we get? How quickly can we get something back? But in the end, is it a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year? I wouldn't think they'd want to wait that long to get anything in return.
Yeah. It depends what the vehicle is. It depends what the return profile is for the vehicle. So, for our fund, we're typically underwriting 5 to 7 year hold periods. And so we'd want to be confident that we could monetize that investment during that hold period. This may be what's called an evergreen vehicle, and they look at it as a cash flow perpetual profile. And as long as it's a healthy yield on their equity, they may be able to put it in a vehicle that they could hold it forever or hold it for 20 years. So I think it just depends on the type of investor and what they've told their investors the type of investments they're going to make are. And again, it's all over the map.
Yeah.
You have all types.
Last thing, Sam, and again, first of all, thanks for your time, because if anything, wanted to kind of learn more about it. I did. I know that Craig did. I know that our audience did, and I think we have. As you've watched college sports, as somebody, as you mentioned, that loves Texas and Baylor, and you even said, listen, man, the veneer's off. What do you see? Is this sustainable, all of what we see going on?
Kind of moving into the philosophical here. If I want to watch professional sports, I think the NFL puts a better product on the field.
Amen.
If I want to root for student athletes, that's gone. So I'm kind of trying to decide, Baylor basketball will always have me.
Yep.
But I'm probably less enthusiastic about college sports in this environment than I was before it changed.
And that's one of the things that we've talked about as a group, that you wonder about how much of an attrition of the fan base might happen, even if the 25 or 30 alphas continue to grow and get better and have all these championship opportunities or whatever. You wonder about the attrition of college fans that might just get disinterested or like, no, I don't like that anymore. I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but at least that's in the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, just like proteins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proteins are bad for a long time. There's fan attrition. College has always been able to keep their fans because there's a tie-in and nostalgia. It was an important part of all of our lives to be there. But when it becomes a business, that becomes less relevant. And it's really all about, is this a high quality product that I enjoy watching? Because it's just a business now.
Sam, thank you very much. Appreciate the knowledge. Sam Laughlin, Chief Executive Officer from Paceline Equity Partners in Dallas. I mentioned it's a very impressive resume when I read about him, and Ashley Hodge gave me Sam's name to try to track him down, and then after he spent the weekend working on trying to get any kind of the finest of details of what might be a part of it. Not that it's written, to give us some answers as well from his perspective.
Price right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
We're now joined by John Kurtz. John, thank you very much. Craig Smoke, David Smoke, 365 Sports. Wanted to have you on to talk mainly about K-State football, but how much of a wow factor was the Coleman Hawkins decision today?
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. It was the culmination of, I would say, like a long dance here between K-State and Coleman Hawkins. It was sounding like leaving his visit, the most likely scenario was that he was going to be a Wildcat, but it kind of dragged out over the course of this whole week. So I think it was a matter of when more so than if in the minds of a lot of us, but it's obviously great to get the confirmation on it. And then, I know the big headline that comes along with it too is the price tag that was, I have to give credit to his agent for getting that out there, because I think there's literally one person in the entire college sports ecosystem who is happy about that number actually being out there, and it is probably his agent. I'm not sure that K-State's thrilled with that, but anyway, it's a huge get, and I think he's the headliner of the class coming here at the very, very end, and he's one of 4 top 50 transfers that they now have. So Jerome Tang has definitely secured a lot of talent. I mean, you can argue about what the fit is going to be with the roster, and they're going to have to figure some of that out, obviously, but they have a ton of talent and versatility to work with for sure.
John, did you know that K-State had that amount to flex, for example, in NIL? Did that come as a surprise to you? And I understand why most people don't want it out there because of just the, now the way that can be flaunted and just talked about and used by other agents and whatnot. But did that surprise you at all, just seeing that amount coming from K-State, or were you pretty much already aware that they kind of had that muscle to flex?
Yeah, well, it's not just, other agents and things like that. It's at K-State, you're thinking, well, we got a whole locker room here to manage, for one, in basketball. And then, hey, we've got a pretty talented quarterback over there named Avery Johnson. Now, I don't know what his specific total is that he has, but I would imagine that, some of the football guys that are making top dollar are looking over like, okay, so like basketball's got that. These are things that I think people are all having to think about, and that the average person doesn't think about a lot with NIL. Like, there's so many ripple effects of it. So for a number of reasons, I'm not sure that they're pleased. But yes, I did know that K-State had that kind of money to throw around, and I think Jerome Tang has been really demanding in making sure that he got the kind of support that he felt like he needed to put together a championship roster. I mean, he hasn't shied away the entire time he's been there about talking about a national championship, and he wanted to make sure he had the backing for that. And the word early on in the offseason was he was going to get the backing for that. And his flirtation with Arkansas, probably helped with some of that too, created a little bit of extra leverage. But yeah, I knew it. And we had more or less said that. I mean, particularly if you're really following like the Three Mile podcast and what we have said on there. But I understand everybody seems to say like, hey, we're doing better in NIL. We're really stepping up our NIL game. And so I get that a lot of the reaction from fans when they hear that is like rolling their eyes like, okay, everybody says that. So like, I get it. I get why that would have been the reaction from a lot of people. But K-State has put their money quite literally where their mouth is, both on the football and basketball front. And just have to give credit to a lot of the donors who have really, really stepped up. Now, you better go win with it, because now you've taken a lot of resources and put together this roster that I think, I heard Rob Doster from the Field of 68 today call it a top 15 roster in the country. You got the pieces, you got the ammo, you said that's what you needed. Now go make it happen. There's obviously a little bit of pressure there.
John, what were your thoughts when you first saw the story that both either Brett McMurphy, Dennis Dodd, and others had on the Big 12 naming rights, and then also the possibility of private equity being involved in the future?
I was not totally stunned, and I don't say this to really like toot my own horn, but it was just reading some of the tea leaves. Like, I have been talking about these things as possibilities for like a couple of weeks on my show. Now, I was saying it more in the context of, I thought individual schools within the Big 12 might be exploring, for instance, the private equity piece. And I'll start with the private equity piece because I do think it's funny. The naming rights thing took off so much more on social media because it's a made for social media topic, right?
Yeah.
But it pales in comparison to the private equity thing. And it's almost a little frustrating to me. I'm like, people like, the discussion here is private equity. That is a massive deal. The naming rights thing, I get why people care, but this is where your focus should be, is on private equity. I heard Dan Wetzel drop the idea. He first really planted that idea in my head probably like 3 weeks ago on the Yahoo College Sports podcast, or College Football Inquirer podcast, which is excellent. And I really enjoy it. And he kind of said like, hey, this private capital thing seems to be coming in here. They say they're talking to 7 to 10 schools. Everybody knows Florida State is like openly discussing this possibility, but like, why, if you're a Big 12 school, why would you not look into this? Because you're the one that really needs the infusion of cash to compete right now. And I don't know that many people were thinking specifically about the Big 12 before that. And that really flipped a light switch in my head where I was like, hey, I mean, Brett Yormark seems like a guy who would have some experience in that world. He's clearly the guy who is open to doing things like this, being innovative, and he certainly is aggressive. And the Big 12 is the perfect candidate here because they need an extra $20-30 million a year to like legitimately compete. So I had kind of started piecing that together. Like, this would not really shock me. I don't know that I expected it to come out like when it did, and I didn't expect it to be like a league-wide thing, but I figured Big 12 schools might be interested in this. I get the debate, and like I thought you guys had an excellent segment on it yesterday, just breaking down both sides of it. Like, I completely understand the side of it that would say like, hey, this is trying to, like what Craig was saying yesterday, you're trying to spend outside of your budget. You're going to get in trouble. Eventually, the Big Ten and the SEC, if you make legitimate headway with this, they're gonna just do the same thing, and you'll never be able to afford what they're doing. I also just want to say on the other side of it, I think they are, at least you have to commend them for being aggressive and trying. They're not gonna just lie down. And I tend to lean a little bit that way, where I'm like so intrigued by this to see if it works, and I just appreciate their attitude after years of the Big 12 being a doormat and reactive and laying down. And I give Brett Yormark a little benefit of the doubt, but I recognize and understand that it's very scary and it could lead everything down a really rough path. I think the thing that I just want people need to understand, because I saw a lot of this where I just feel like people knee-jerk react to private equity and say, well, Brett Yormark's an idiot. This is a terrible idea. Like, why would you do this? You don't need to do this. People need to it needs to be drilled through their head. Like, if you do not do this, 2 years from now, like Ollie Gordon, Jalen Daniels, Avery Johnson, like the star power that you have in the conference, it's going to be next to impossible to hang on to guys like that. Or certainly the amount of guys, Noah Fafita, Teteroa McMillan, like guys like that in the conference would be really tough to hang on to them if you're not able to meet that $22 million revenue number. And I don't think people grasp how quickly that's coming up, how massive of a problem that is for Big 12 athletic departments and their financial situation right now. And just the reality of, yes, this may be signing your soul over to the devil. If you don't do it, you're going to be a legitimate minor league within the next 2 years. Whereas I know there's jokes about how you are right now, but you're still relatively competitive. It would be another step down if you're not able to do that. So I think people really need to understand that when we're discussing all of this.
Yeah, and I had more time to flesh it out, and appreciate you listening as always, and vice versa. And I think I said earlier in the show today of like you absolutely credit Yormark for trying to figure out ways to, like when he made the business comment a couple weeks ago, like this is what he was talking about. He was talking about any number of things that could add money. And so here's a couple of examples of that. And you're right. Like just because the SEC or Big Ten might go, oh, that's working for them, let's do that now, it doesn't mean you can't do it. Like you don't not do things just because others might do it. And I kind of landed on that last night. But I definitely commend him for trying to think outside the box. And I think, John, that there's definitely, it's weird, there's like Big 12 like detractors out there. I don't know what Yormark did to like offend so many people or not, but I feel like some of the pushback is people like, not that they necessarily hate the idea, but they kind of hate that the Big 12 came up with the idea and might actually gain some ground, is kind of how I read it from some sides as well.
Well, that is one of the most frustrating parts of the whole day yesterday for me was seeing that and a lot of jokes being made. And I get why the jokes are being made, like, hey, get ready for the Big 12 championship game or the All-State 12 championship game presented by, and then there's just 18 sponsors on everything.
Yeah.
UCF doesn't even have a name anymore and they're sponsored, all that. I get it. And I understand why there's criticism of it because like private equity, and I think we can all agree, like private equity in college sports is not ideal. Mm-hmm. Like that is not a good thing. Nobody would really want that. But the Big 12 is the one that's at the center of it right now. So it's taking all these shots from people like, oh, the Big 12 is ruining college sports or taking us down this terrible path. And what is the Big 12 doing? Jumping the shark. Well, and really it's not the Big 12 that has jumped the shark. The Big 12 is merely reacting to the greed of the SEC, Big 10, and the TV networks that have put the Big 12 in this position. If Texas and Oklahoma were still in the conference, the Big 12 would not be flirting with private equity right now. The Big 12 would not be about to be the All-State 12 in all likelihood because they would be on more equal footing with everybody. But they have been painted into a desperate corner. You've already killed one conference, and you've got another one here that's painted into a corner. Like, what are we supposed to do? There should be more criticism for, like, the Big 10 and the SEC corralling the college football playoff revenue the way that they have in their corner if you're going to go after the Big 12 because – the Big 12 is just responding to what everybody has done to it and put it in this position to have to do it. So, yeah, I agree with you. That is a part that is kind of maddening with all of this. I'm like, just don't blame the Big 12. They are really just kind of a symptom of the overall issue that is going on here, which is basically greed. And that whole march has been led by the SEC, Big 10, and the TV networks.
Do you think that either if the Big 10 or the SEC had come up with this idea or announced this first, it would have been thought of as brilliant?
I'm sure there would still be some pushback, but I think that you'd get more benefit of the doubt, right? Greg Sankey more or less serves as the commissioner of college football at this point. Mm-hmm. I just kind of picture it like Tony Petitti is just sort of standing there attached at the hip with him doing whatever it is that Greg Sankey says. So he's really the guy. I think he garners so much respect that people would be a little bit more open to it, yes. I do agree with you guys. That's a fair enough point, and maybe some people would say that's Big 12 sour grapes. But I think when you are at the top and people are already really just bowing at the altar, it would change the tenor of it to an extent. Don't get me wrong, there would definitely still be people that would not like it, but I do think it would be messaged a little bit differently. And if the the SEC and the Big Ten decide to do it now on down the road, it will certainly be messaged differently, because then they'll be, well, the Big 12 started it, so they're just going to go pile on to that. And I heard Sankey's comments about it yesterday, just kind of saying like, well, we better be careful. And it just, I don't know. Anything that guy says tends to get me worked up. Yeah. But it's all because I know that just he is the one that has created this situation, and then to kind of come back around and be like, well, I don't know about you guys doing this risky stuff. Well, look, man, you stole from us. You took Texas and Oklahoma, so this is the reaction in kind, my friend. I'm sorry.
I think that those guys like that at this point are just like, why don't you die? Like, will you just die already, Big Two? And like here they are, just as resilient as ever, and now coming up with other ideas that very well others may follow. So yeah, it's going to be fun to see, the naming rights and the private equity and kind of how all that follows. But yeah, like with the Big 12 story comes out, and then there's 3 other conferences that are like Conference USA is looking at naming rights, and the Americans looking at naming rights. So yeah, that's going to be fun to track.
Yeah, it is interesting. And right, the Big 12 does this or needs to do. They got to find a way to get some more scratch. They got to find a way to get more money, whether it's $2 million or $20 million per team. They have to be able to at least play or compete somewhat within the same universe.
We made fun of the Rose Bowl folks who could not budge on the kickoff times, and in some of the Pac-12 stuck in the mud kind of ideas. At this point, tradition, as much as we can maintain it, John, is great, but at this point, tradition's kind of already halfway out the window. So if you're the Big 12, you got to do what you got to do, man. At this point, that's kind of how I feel about it. Just to kind of encapsulate all my feelings is, don't massively change the sport, but yeah, if you want to change the conference for some naming rights or have an influx of money somehow, and you feel like you can pay it off, then by all means do whatever you can to keep this thing chugging along.
100%. And I think that is something where maybe we as people in Big 12 country and Big 12 fans have a little different. We are maybe more jaded to everything now than your general college football fan is, and that probably is some of the difference in reaction here. Because to me, it's like I gave up hope long ago that tradition and what is good for the sport and anything like that actually matters anymore. I mean, that left if it hadn't already, it left in 2021 in July when Texas and Oklahoma left the conference, and we saw what the reaction was to the Big 12 being on life support at that point in time. So I think, are just so conditioned to like, yeah, man, this is what happens. You're going to have to fight, scrap, and do things like this. If you're a Big Ten or an SEC fan, yeah, you're sort of aware that stuff has been going on in college football, but in your world, things have just been getting better and better. And you're fine. And this all seems great. The playoffs exciting. And now we've got more matchups against big brands. To you, it's still much more like a utopian kind of college football society if you're not caring about those who are below you on the totem pole. So in Big 12 country, I think we're a little more like, yeah, this makes sense. You got to do it. Whereas it's still more jarring for people that are not in the position where they're desperate enough to have to do it. Yeah. And on the naming rights thing, I mean, it makes sense. Would I prefer it to be the Big 12 rather than the All-State 12? Yes, I would. Is $3 million per school a ton of money, like life-changing money for these schools? No, it's not. But if we're being honest with ourselves, what brand value does the Big 12 really, truly have? I mean, for most of its lifespan, it's been kind of made fun of. It's been poked fun of. There are many other conferences that use the big. The 12 has not made sense for a long time because you haven't had 12 teams for a long time, and now you've got 16. So to me, that, again, kind of falls under the same category. It's not sacred to me. It's fine if they can make some extra money that way. And look, I'm a K-State fan. K-State sold a home game against one of their rivals to go make $2.25 million to go play it in Ireland.
Right.
It's just, it's the world that we live in right now. I'm just conditioned to being used to it, I think.
Yeah, it is a conference. I mean, it's been attacked, but also allowed itself to be attacked. That it was always late on everything, it seemed like, reactive rather than proactive. But I got a question about realignment. It seems like no matter what, and Craig brought this up when your mark was quoted a week or two ago about open for business. And you know this, John, there are some that are on the Twitterverse that just jump at the possibility of being able to throw things against the wall about realignment. I know you stayed away from jumping the shark. It's still something that we know might be there, but do you feel like it has calmed down for now?
Yeah, it feels like a little bit, I guess, outside of a stray Utah rumor here or there. But if we can keep retired New York Post columnist out of things, I think maybe it has settled down a bit for right now. And like it's tough. I feel like in our space, especially because it drives a lot of interest and intrigue, but at the same time, as like a fan and just someone who wants, again, what's good for the sport, I think it would be better if things did just calm down for a little while right now. I think the next thing is we're all just waiting on the ACC, and we're waiting on what's going to happen with Florida State and Clemson in particular. I will even say I'm like more open to thinking now that there is a legitimate possibility that the ACC, if they were to lose 4 to 6 schools, could try to build back something, whether that's going to be more like that, like Ivy League light kind of a league there. If they would, try to backfill with some other kind of G5-ish sort of schools right now. Like I have opened a bit more to that possibility that maybe it's not totally inevitable that the conference completely collapses. But I think at this point, like we know, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina are going to be gone. Beyond that, we'll see what happens. Doug Rohan, who I know you guys have had on too, he's done a really good job of breaking down a lot of stuff within that case. But talking to him, I'm not sure that I feel like anything's happening in an expedited fashion. I think it's going to drag on for a really long time. At least, 6 months to a year minimum for that before we have a real resolution there, which will be the next big domino, I think, to fall. So until then, we're probably just sitting here in kind of a holding pattern. But there will always be speculation, and I understand why everybody likes to do it, why it's fascinating and entertaining, and completely understand. But I think for tangible moves, we're probably gonna have to sit and wait for a minute.
Sure. John, don't want to let you go without asking about I know we'll have plenty of preseason poll talk and things like that, but we've been doing our own little power rankings, just kind of starting to take a look at the actual football. It seems like if you were to take 100 ballots of voters, that K-State, Utah would be in some order of 1-2 on like 95 of those ballots, I feel like, at least. And maybe that's a tad bit high, but 90% I think would be valid because they just seem like they're the two clear-cut favorites. Do you take any particular, defense to Utah being placed above a K-State for some people? And do you view it the same way, or who do you view as like maybe rattling those cages a little bit?
Yeah, I think to me, that's the way I would view it. I think I would actually, the more I really sit and think about it, I kind of think there are 3 teams that should be in that top tier and just barely above your tier 2. I think Utah, K-State, and Kansas, to me, are the 3 that belong there. Now, Kansas is very contingent on Jalen Daniels' health, quite obviously. But they have such a manageable schedule, so much coming back on offense. And, it's hard not to just think the world of Lance Leipold as a head coach. K-State, I think the consistency as a program combined with having Avery Johnson elevating the ceiling of the team at quarterback is enough for me to say, they absolutely have Big 12 championship as a ceiling there. And Utah, it's just a lot of respect for the program. I know the Utah relationship has been a little bit contentious, but if you're talking about like the football program and purely what they've accomplished, and Cam Rising himself, again, health contingent, but if he's going to be anywhere near totally healthy this year, like I think they absolutely, I would give them the nod as like, if I were filling out my ballot right now, which I always make the joke, like they send it to me every year, and I always feel like I'm not well versed enough at this point in time to give you, especially like a great all Big 12 team, so I end up not filling the things out. But I would go Utah 1. They've won the Pac-12 2 of the last 3 years. Kyle Whittingham is, he's a dog. Like he's a great head coach. Cam Rising, great quarterback, and they've just earned that respect as a program, I think, to me, to be there. So then obviously, your next year, like your Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Arizona, they're knocking on the door. Arizona would have been in serious contention for me before the coaching change to be the number 1 in the league, even with Utah coming in, but I do have some questions about what they've lost and then just what Brent Brennan's going to be as a head coach. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it right now. I don't take offense to anybody who's not going to put K-State there as the Big 12 champ, because I think they have that potential. But in fairness, there are some holes, and we do need to see Avery Johnson go out and do it and like really truly elevate the team over over an entire season. So that's kind of where I'm at on it right now.
All right, one more thing, and we've had you on for a long time. We appreciate it. We had Chris Kleiman on yesterday, had a chance to visit with him. I even shared a text or two with you to kind of get some insight on maybe what's being said in Manhattan. Has the state of Kansas ever been in this kind of shape with their two football coaches being hot commodities and both appear to be damn good?
I'm having to think back here. No, I think the short answer is no. There was a period of time during Bill Snyder's first tenure where he overlapped with Glenn Mason.
Right.
At Kansas, Glenn Mason was a pretty solid head coach there. And then there was a brief moment of time when Mark Mangino was on his way out the door where Bill Snyder was just getting it back ramped up, 2009, 2010. When Snyder I guess 2010 was Turner Gill. So I guess you had one season then, that 2009 season, where those two overlapped, but not where they're at the peak of their powers right now, like Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman are. And it really is funny. The rivalry has just drastically changed because of K-State basketball and Kansas football right now with where everything's at. Even today, Coleman Hawkins, for those who don't know, is I think Trollman Hawkins is his nickname. I heard the Field of 68 guys say that. He's very into doing a little bit of trolling, and he's been going after Hunter Dickinson already and did plenty when those two were playing in the Big Ten. That's even adding another element to the rivalry. You had Handshake Gate last year with Bill Self and Jerome Tang. Tang has played 500 basketball against Bill Self so far, which elevated that rivalry. Then on the other side, obviously football. Lance Leipold and those guys, they've been nipping at K-State's heels and obviously have a great program and a lot of consistency, and he's doing it kind of in a similar Bill Snyder sort of fashion at Kansas right now. And that's basically what Chris Kleiman has been doing at K-State too. So it's just wild to me how on fire the rivalry is now when it was pretty dead for a long time. K-State would just roll over Kansas in football, and you kind of knew in basketball, K-State will win here or there, but Kansas was going to be generally the dominant force there. I think between personalities that have been injected into the rivalry lately and just the sheer winning on both sides that wasn't happening before, it's at its best right now.
What a great segment, John. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it. We'll see you in Vegas. Are we going to see you in Vegas?
I am going to be in Vegas.
There you go.
So looking forward to that.
We'll see you there at Big 12 Media Days. John Kurtz, Kansas City Sports Network. A ton of topics, questions, and discussion from him today.
Alan Samuels with the new Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in Waco, your ultimate destination for unbeatable deals and top-notch service. Looking for a reliable ride to conquer these beautiful spring days? Look no further. The powerful trucks and sleek sedans are the perfect SUV. We've got the perfect vehicle to match your style and budget. Over 300 new vehicles to choose from. Now's the time to make your move. Enjoy special discounts, low financing rates, and incredible incentives. But hurry, these offers won't last forever. Alan Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texans are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
Pleasant. It's different
I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Aloha! Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5 Big 12 QBs, presented by Texas Beef House. Please be sure to use our promo code SICK'EM10 at checkout for 10% off your first order. And we're going to dive into the Big 12 QBs. So I fully expect, by the way, an Oklahoma State fan to get mad at me because Alan Bowman is not on this list. And let me just tell you, wet blanket at all your minions, he was never going to be. He wasn't even in the top 10. He might have been in the top 10. But he was not going to make this list. This was challenging to make. The Big 12 is a better quarterback league than I think most nationally realize. Number 5, Cam Rising at Utah. Why so low for a guy who's a 2-time conference champion? Because of that guy right there. This guy exploded a year ago. And look, you see I put a little dot on it. That guy exploded a year ago, and I'm not sure he's going to be Cam Rising again. If Cam Rising can be Cam Rising again, he's going to shoot up this list. But if he's a shell of himself, that's not going to be good at all for Utah because it's hard to readjust to playing in a different style. So, Cam Rising at number 5. At number 4, Shedeur Sanders. Maybe the most athletically gifted quarterback of this bunch, but he only has 4 wins as a starting quarterback at the FBS level. And while I think he'll be good, and he'll be better this year, I just don't, and he's going to be a high draft pick. All those things are true about Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to keep him at 4. He's a huge playmaker. He's going to do great things in the Big 12. He's going to have some big games and big numbers, but wins are an important thing to me. I know it wasn't all his fault or really any of his fault, but they should be better this year with better players around him. I'm still going to rank him at number 4 because there's just also some leadership things that I'm not nuts about going on with Shedeur right now. Needs to grow up a little bit. I think it's something that can be solved, but still, it's why he's at number 4. Number 3, Jalen Daniels at Kansas. Why is this guy, who I think is the best overall quarterback in the Big 12, at number 3 and not at number 1? Well, he only played 3 games last year. So much like Cam Rising, I got to hedge my bets here, and he's the big what if for Kansas. If Jalen Daniels plays all 12 games, this is a Kansas team where the sky's the limit. If they have to go back and forth, or he only plays 3 games again, that's going to be bad news for a team that'll probably still be good without him, but not quite as great as they could be with him, because he is an absolute difference maker and a gamer. But if that back flares up again, then it's kind of all over the shouting for Jalen Daniels. Number 2, Avery Johnson at Kansas State. I picked Kansas State to win the league. Avery Johnson is, essentially a redshirt freshman. I mean, he played a little bit last year and played really well when he did. Texas Tech knows he scored 5 touchdowns against them. He had a great performance in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. And with the backfield he has, with the offensive line he's going to have, even though they're replacing a lot of guys, he's going to make waves. I think Kansas State wins the Big 12. I think it's very much on the arm and legs of Avery Johnson, who's a dual-threat superstar. But, again, he's still young. I think the most polished and established quarterback right now, without any of the big what-if questions, Noah Fafita, number 1 from Arizona. This guy's probably going to be the highest draft pick of all of them when it's all said and done. He is really, really, really good. He has brought Arizona out of the shadows, out of the darkness, and has them where people think they could win the Big 12 in the first year. When you've got a quarterback like this, that shortens a lot of rebuilds, and especially with a new coaching staff. But he's got the best receiver in the Big 12 in Teteroa McMillan. He is fantastic. He's going to be really good in this conference, and he's going to light some things up. So right now I've got Noah Fifita at number 1, but believe me, this list is fluid, and I really, really wanted to put KJ Jefferson on here somehow, and if Cam Rising wasn't coming back, KJ Jefferson probably would have been on this list, but he's not. Noah Fifita from Arizona at number 1, and I'm fortifying my house for the onslaught of Oklahoma State fans who are going to be mad that Alan Bowman is not on this list. So, Craig picked you guys at 3rd after Smokey and I picked you at 4th. Isn't that something? That's something for today? Please don't hurt us. This is 365 Sports. We're wrapping it up right now.
We're back again tomorrow, every weekday, 3 to 6 right here on 365 Sports tonight. We've got a heck of a lineup. Hope you'll like it tomorrow. Thank you for your time today. Craig and I back in the studio on Friday, thanks to Garrett Ross and Emery Winter and our great sponsors and you who watch and listen. 365 Sports tonight as we grow, and have a great night.